Attention on this channel. We've got an important message. All observations and opinions shared here are for educational purposes only. This content is intended for adults. Viewer discretion is advised. Be advised that any individuals mentioned are not intended to suggest involvement in any crime.
Case by case, got the fire. Ha!
Come on,
Yo, you wanna talk about true crime? We start with a guy that flows. Digital footprints meet criminal defense, that's how this story goes. This channel's all about online evidence, the stuff they overlook. From live stream chats to deleted posts, it's all in the true crime book. My goal is to provide insight for the attorney in the darkest hour, to find the proof that can make a case or break a criminal's power. So whether you're a lawyer or a PI, we're diving deep in the mess, exposing misconduct and hidden truths to get to the very best leads. We break it down case by case on the trail of the facts. We show how digital evidence changes case outcomes. We on their tracks. No rumors, no gossip, just the evidence clear and concise. Shining a light on the shadows at any cost or price. What do we do?
case by case.
What's the motto? We're here for the victims, the ones who were left behind. We're here for the families, giving them peace of mind. We follow the paper trail, the digital footprints and the timelines. Connecting the dots, we're reading between the lines. We don't just talk theory, we show you how it works in practice. We're here to help you stay ahead of the curve, to get a new analysis. You think you're in charge, but we're here to find what matters most. We're giving a voice to the voiceless, like a digital ghost. Digital ghost, digital ghost. We break it down case by case on the trail of the facts. We show how digital evidence changes case outcomes. We on their tracks. No rumors, no gossip, just the evidence clear and concise. Shining a light on the shadows at any cost or price. What do we do?
Case by case.
What's the motto? From digital clues. The mystery, you wanna know the answers? We're dedicated to the chase. From the first look at the scene to the final resting place, we're here to find the answers, to give the victims their due. A true crime channel with a heart and a purpose too. We're here to build up, to expose the truth, and to shine a light on the darkest of deeds with all our might. We're here for the truth, we're here for the facts, and that's it. We don't chase the trends, we just chase the truth and never quit. We let the past speak for itself, we let the facts lay the ground. We're just here to be a voice, a tribute that is sound. Yeah, it's all for the truth.
Ha! Come on, come on. Let's go.
Their thoughts for you, yeah.
Won't kiss the ring. Yeah. Ha.
Come on. Let's go.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Case by Case. How's everyone going today? How's everyone doing today besides pulling their hair out? Well, this was supposed to be, hold on one second. This live is for our discussion of the direct appeal that is being filed on behalf of Richard Allen versus the state of Indiana. Let me see. So initially, I was going live to give you guys all an update. I'm now getting notifications that the direct appeal is live, because before it was not. I was going to go over the postings by the court about the appendix and the public information and the non-public information. Appears that they're going to be excluding certain aspects of the appeal. I'm assuming they are exhibits that are sealed, that are not going to be viewable by the public. But I'm going to pull it back up again to see if the brief is actually live. Give me 1 second. I know everybody is just eager to read through this. Okay, we do have the brief. So we are going to be reading the direct appeal brief filed by Richard Allen's attorneys in the Delphi case. My intent is to read it all the way through. I haven't even opened it yet. So we are going to do this together. Again, welcome to Case by Case. If you haven't hit that like and subscribe, please do. I took the day off of work to be here with all of you with the anticipation that this was going to drop. And here we are. It did. I had a link up for over 24 hours, I believe, anticipating this. So if you give me a thumbs up or something in the chat if you're ready for me to get going. And let me send out some. I know Terry wanted to be on here with me today. Terry is an attorney from Georgia who can, and I'm still letting some people trickle in here. We've got about 80 viewing so far. So please like, subscribe, and share. Let everyone know that we're live with this document. Let me see if I can, now the plan was, or is, that once we do this live, we will hop back on afterwards with Michael Osbrook for him to give us his insight into how the brief reads, the legal aspects and arguments of it. He's going to come on and provide some commentary for all of us in that regard. This is just going to be a straight read through that way, because it's going to be a long brief for sure. And then we will deal with the questions and our opinions and what it all means on another live. But this is just for the read through. And I came up here and sat down. Rick is in Oklahoma, by the way. I'm going to give it about 2 more minutes before I get started. I'm going to get this document downloaded and uploaded into StreamYard. Give people a little bit more time to get in here. And I also need to run and grab my Stanley, my cup of water, because I have a feeling I'm going to need it. Wow. So this brief is 113 pages long. Wow. We're going to be here for a while. And if I need to break it in 2 parts, I might have to do that. But I'm going to try to get through all of it today for you guys. Everybody's saying, let's go, let's go, let's go. Well, let me add it to the stage. There it is. Let me grab my cup of water And I'm going to see if Shaboogie is going to, not Shaboogie. Hi, Shaboogies. She's in the chat. I'm going to see if Fungi is going to hop on and Terry's going to hop on. And we're going to get started. Terry, give me just, there's Terry. Ooh, Terry, you might have to change your, hold on a second here. For some reason, Terry, your avatar is coming up with my picture. I don't know why, but that's okay. All right, let me grab my cup of water.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. How are you? Can you hear me?
Hey, is that better?
Yeah, I can hear you.
There seems to be like a
Can you
delay.
hear me?
Hey, is that better?
Oh, you have to mute
There's
what
like
you
a
have.
really long delay.
You need to mute what you have in the background, what you have on in the background. I'm going to grab my cup really fast, then we're going to get started.
Okay, is that better? Hey, can you hear me now?
Okay, I'm back. Nope, you have not missed anything critical true crime. We are just now getting started with the brief. And I think Terry pulled herself out. Terry, there she is now. She switched.
Okay, is that better? Can you hear me?
Yes, that's better.
Okay, I had to go out and come all the way back in.
Yeah, that worked because it switched your photograph too. Your photo was showing my photo for some reason.
Well, because when you sent me the link, it loaded me in as you.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
That's okay. It's all good. So are we excited?
Yes.
Here we go. Let's do
Here we
it.
go. Okay. I'll begin reading. We'll probably take turns on and off, but this is just going to be a straight read through, and then we'll do commentary on another live about what is in this brief. As you guys all know, it's a direct appeal. The deadline was last night at midnight. They had filed a motion to expand the number of words allotted to them normally, and it was granted. So this brief appears to be 113 pages long, and hopefully it is worth the wait.
Hey, Amy, can you remove that Timothy banner that's scrolling there? I can't find a way to remove it.
Oh, yeah. There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, here we go.
Critical true crime. That's so sweet. Thank you. Usually I get these comments about how Southern I sound. So I'm excited about this.
So this is the appellant's brief filed by Richard Allen against the state of Indiana. We have the table of contents. We're going to kind of skim through these very quickly. Number one, we have the trial court committed reversible error by admitting evidence seized from the unconstitutional search of Allen's home and denying a Franks hearing. The trial court erred by concluding Detective Liggett did not make false statements or reckless omissions in his affidavit. Under that insert, the trial court erred, we have number one, Detective Liggett omitted and changed key information that undermined his conclusion Allen was bridge guy. Number two, Detective Liggett's omissions and false statements recklessly misled the judge. Three, with the omitted and accurate evidence, the affidavit was insufficient to establish probable cause. Number four, the error requires reversal. B, at minimum, Allen is entitled to remand for a Franks hearing. Part two, the trial court erred by admitting statements Allen made while gravely disabled during his unprecedented pretrial solitary confinement in a maximum security prison. A, standard of review and additional facts. The trial court abused its discretion by refusing to admit the IPAS order settlement into the suppression hearing. Part C, the state failed to prove Allen's statements made while gravely disabled were voluntary. Part 1, the U.S. Constitution, the state failed to prove that Allen's statements were not a product of psychological coercion. A, the state's prolonged solitary confinement of Allen was state action. B, the state's prolonged solitary confinement was psychological coercion. C, Allen's confessions were a product of solitary-induced psychosis, not rational intellect. Part 2, Indiana Constitution. The state failed to prove Allen's statements were a product of rational intellect rather than the state's misconduct. D, even if the court finds Allen's statements voluntary, they are a product of unconstitutional detention. Boom. 1. Allen's prolonged solitary confinement violated Article 1, 12, and 15. Number 2, the constitutional violations require suppression. E, the error was not harmless. Part 3, the court denied Allen his right to present a complete defense to explain the scene and impeach the investigation. A standard review. B, the court committed reversible error by excluding Blair's sketch of Bridge Guy. C, the court committed reversible error in excluding Tobin's testimony. The court committed reversible error in admitting hearsay to rehabilitate the timeline upon which the state built its entire case. Hello, fungi.
What up? Got a new avatar. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, I like the new avatar. I like that.
That's cute.
Thank you.
Part E, the court committed reversible error by excluding evidence that impeached the credibility of Allen's confessions. Number 1, the court erred by excluding the audio from Allen's solitary confinement videos. Part 2, the trial court committed reversible error in prohibiting the jury from hearing 2 phone calls made on April 3rd of 2023. Number 3, the trial court erred by excluding the statements and behaviors that provided the foundation for Dr. Grayson's opinion that Allen's confessions were not credible. Part F, the trial court committed reversible error in denying Allen's motion to correct errors. G, the trial court committed reversible error when it excluded Allen's evidence explaining this murder was a ritual killing. Part H, the trial court denied Allen his right to show the state's investigation was incomplete, overlooked plausible leads, and mishandled evidence related to third-party guilt. Then they're going to have on page 112 the conclusion, also the verification of word count certificate of service and the certificate of service itself. Again, portions of this brief have been withheld from the public because of certain aspects of it being sealed. The table of authorities that we're seeing here right now is every case law that the attorneys for Rick Allen will plan to cite throughout this document. They have to be listed, and they're listed in alphabetical order. And what pages that they are mentioned is also listed beside them. So we're going to skip through these pages. There's quite a few. They have listed the rules of evidence that they're going to be citing throughout this document to support their arguments. The statutes they're going to raise, the Constitution aspects of this argument they have listed, and secondary sources. So here we go. Statement of issue. Whether the search of Allen's home was unconstitutional and the resulting evidence inadmissible because law enforcement omitted or altered key facts in the warrant application. Number 2, whether statements Allen made while gravely disabled during unprecedented pretrial solitary confinement were involuntary, the product of unconstitutional detention, and inadmissible. Number 3, whether the trial court denied Allen his right to a fair trial, to present a complete defense, to explain the scene, and impeach the investigation.
Can I just say something here real quick? Just for any of you that don't know, the appeal never gets to the merits of the case. So you're going to be hearing things of procedural nature and things that are asking, was the law followed properly? So just to set that out there in case anybody wonders.
Statement of the case. And now remember, we are the appellate team is confined to a certain number of words. So each paragraph is vital that it's jam-packed with information, and they're going to, I don't want to say sacrifice certain areas, but they're going to limit word salad or unnecessary information from certain aspects of the document so they can apply more focus and more words in other areas of importance. So statement of case. On October 28th of 2022, the state charged Richard Allen with 2 counts of felony murder by kidnapping, which was amended on March 22nd of 2024 to add 2 counts of murder. On November 11th, 2024, following a 25-day trial, the jury returned a guilty verdict on all counts. The trial court sentenced Allen to an aggregate sentence of 130 years. Allen filed a motion to correct errors, which the trial court denied. Statement of facts. This is going to tell us what the crime was. On February 14th of 2017, 14-year-old Liberty German and 13-year-old Abigail Williams were found dead in the woods. 2 days later, Allen, like many others, came forward and reported he had been on the trail that day and saw 3 girls. Because law enforcement wanted to know whether he had seen any possible suspects, he was interviewed in a parking lot. After the interview, the lead was marked cleared and the report was misfiled. Allen then returned to his job, family, and home in the small Delphi community. For the next 5 years, he did not sell his car, destroy his clothes, dispose of his gun, or relocate, but continued his normal routine. No witness identified Allen as Bridge Guy. When the report was rediscovered in September 2022, law enforcement insisted Allen was Bridge Guy without a single eyewitness. Over the next several years, the state built its case against Allen. Number 1, the warrant. A, bridge guy video. On February 13th, 2017, around 1:30 p.m., Liberty German's older sister dropped off Liberty German and Abigail Williams at the Monon High Bridge trail to explore and take photos. The girls had the day off from school and the weather was unseasonably warm. In November 2025, this is a footnote, I believe, down here at the bottom. In November of 2025, the clerk filed an amended notice of completion of transcript. The supplemental November transcripts will be cited as November supplementary. Citations to November audio files will be November supplemental EX. I'm not sure what that means, but that was a footnote. When the girls failed to meet Liberty German's father at the specified time and no one could reach them, Liberty German's family contacted police and an extensive search began. The next day, around noon, the girls were found murdered in the woods near Deer Creek, not far from the Monon High Bridge. The best evidence law enforcement had was from Liberty German's phone found at the scene under Abigail Williams' body. Liberty German recorded a 43-second video showing Abigail Williams walking across the bridge with someone, aka bridge guy, behind her. Law enforcement enhanced the video, yielding the following. Picture of bridge guy.
Enhance.
The man is heard telling the girls down the hill. Law enforcement set up a tip line and many people came forward. 16-year-old Rayleigh Voorhees, her sisters, and her friend, Bree Wilbur, told police that they were on the trail, and as they were leaving, they saw a man near the entrance to the Freedom Bridge. Betsy Blair, who frequently walked the trails for exercise, came forward and told police she saw a white man on the high bridge standing on a platform and seemed to be waiting for someone. She thought the man was the guy in the video because he was wearing the same clothes. When she reached the bridge, she turned around and noticed two girls approaching. 4 months after the murder, law enforcement interviewed Sarah Carball. She told police that on February 13th, while driving eastbound on County Road 300, she saw a muddy man wearing a tan coat walking west toward town. After seeing the image of Bridge Guy in the media, Carball said he possibly was the man she had seen. 5.5 years later, Richard Allen. On September 21st of 22, law enforcement rediscovered the tip from Allen. Allen called and said he was on the bridge between maybe 1 and 3 and saw 3 girls. Allen shared his address, phone number, and his MEID number, which is a unique identifier that can be used to track a phone's location. The lead investigators immediately started investigating now 50-year-old Allen. They believed that the man the 4 girls, Rayleigh Voorhees and others, saw on the trail was Bridge Guy. Allen still lived in the same house and worked at the same CVS store in Delphi as he did in 2017. On October 13th of 2024, when police showed up at his house, Allen agreed to talk with them. After riding to the police station, Allen patiently answered questions about his personal life and the walk he took on his day 5.5 years earlier. Allen explained after spending the morning with his mom on February 13th, 2017, he went home to get a jacket before going to the trails. He walked out to the first platform of the high bridge, looked at the fish, and then walked back before returning home to watch the stock market. He explained that he came forward after law enforcement asked to speak with anyone who had been on the trail. The next day, a DNR officer interviewed him in a parking lot. Allen believed he told the officer he was on the trail between noon and 1:30 or 1:45. He could not recall seeing 3 girls leaving the trail. Being 5 years past, Alan could not remember what car he drove or the clothes he wore. He remembered wearing blue jeans and a jacket. When asked what type of jacket, Alan did not remember and listed all the jackets he owned: a blue Carhartt, a black Carhartt or off-brand with a hood, sweatshirts, hoodies, and a fleece. He kept a skull cap in his jacket. He could have been wearing tennis shoes or boots. When law enforcement asked for consent to search, Alan expressed concern that they were making him somebody's fall guy by trying to fit pieces together that do not fit to close the case. He was confused, thinking they were talking to him to look for helpful information. Although he understood they had to clear everyone on the trail, he was bothered by the time passed. After a break, law enforcement returned more confrontational with Alan, who became frustrated and being accused of murder, and law enforcement contacting his wife and daughter while he was at the station. Confronting Alan with the bridge guy photo, Alan responded, "If that is taken with that girl's phone, that is not me. I have never met those girls before." They accused Alan of admitting he wore the same clothes as bridge guy, and Alan corrected the investigator, reminding him that he said he could have been wearing a sweatshirt. Alan added that everyone has looked at the bridge guy photo for years. To him, it did not even look like bridge guy was wearing a Carhartt. Finally, when law enforcement accused him of either being out there to kill the girls or introduce them to someone, Alan said, "Good luck finding anything that points to that." Despite Alan repeatedly telling law enforcement, "Arrest me or take me home," they would not stop. Alan eventually had to get up and walk out to end the interview. Section C, the story Detective Liggett told the judge. On October 13th of 2022, the state applied for a warrant for Alan's home, car, and electronics. Detective Liggett's probable cause affidavit, he concluded that Alan is the last individual to have contact with Liberty German and Abigail Williams, and is the individual depicted on the Monon High Bridge from the video taken from LG's phone. He reasoned that Alan admitted he was wearing a blue jacket and head covering like bridge guy and was on the trail/bridge around the time of the abduction and witnessed the four girls and Blair and Carball saw a man they believed to be bridge guy wearing a blue jacket. Liggett implied Blair and the girls saw the same man because they similarly described his jacket. Also, Detective Liggett concluded that Alan drove his 2016 Ford Focus and parked at the old CPS building on 300 North. He claimed that witnesses Blair and Wilson saw a car backed into a parking spot at the CPS building. Wilson felt the driver of the car was trying to conceal the license. Wilson said the car was a purple PT Cruiser, or a small SUV type vehicle. Blair and Wilson drew a diagram and had the vehicle they saw parked in the same general area and manner. D, the part of the story Detective Liggett did not tell the judge. 1, Blair's description of the bridge guy did not match Alan. Detective Liggett did not tell the judge about the differences between Blair's description of the man on the bridge and Alan's appearance. Just 3 days after the murders, Blair described the man as a white, age 20, of medium build and having brown curly hair. An artist completed the sketch with which Blair rated a 10 out of 10 for accuracy. Which there's the sketch.
Wow, looks so much like Richard Allen, guys.
In 2019, Detective Liggett personally interviewed Blair, who again described the man as slender, youthful, boyish looking, in his 20s to early 30s, no facial hair, and with poofy hair like the sketch portrayed, which she still gave a 9 out of 10 in accuracy. At the time of the murders, Allen was 44 years old, 5'6", and had very short hair. Number 2, Blair's description of the oddly parked car did not match Allen's. Detective Liggett also admitted Blair's description of the oddly parked car as resembling a 1965 Ford Comet with sharper angles. Below is her drawing of the car compared to Allen's hatchback.
Uncanny resemblance.
Sure is.
Kidding. I'm kidding.
Blair also said the oddly parked car was a nondescript color, but not black. Allen's car was black. Number 3, Blair did not believe the man on the bridge was the same man Carball saw walking down the road. Detective Liggett omitted that Blair told him the man Carball described walking down the road is not the same man she saw on the bridge. Below is Carball sketch.
Take a shot, guys, every time she can't say it.
Yeah. After talking with Blair in 2019, ISP issued a press release distinguishing the man Carball saw from the man on the bridge. Explained the men are not the same person, and that Blair's sketch is representative of the face of the person captured in the video of LG's cell phone. Number 4, Carball said the man walking down the road was wearing a tan coat. Detective Liggett also made false statements in the affidavit. He claimed that an interview was done of Sarah Carball in 2017, and she stated she saw a man wearing blue colored jacket and was muddy and bloody. In her 2017 interview, Carball did not describe the man as bloody, only muddy. She said he was wearing a tan jacket. Number five. Allen never said he was wearing a blue Carhartt, and his wife said Allen had purchased his current Carhartt a couple years earlier. Detective Liggett falsely stated that Allen said he was wearing a black or blue Carhartt with a hood and a head covering. Allen told investigators that he did not know what he was wearing, and it could have been anything from a Carhartt to a sweatshirt, and that he kept a skull cap in his jacket. Although Allen's wife said he had a blue Carhartt in 2022, Liggett left out that she said Allen purchased that coat a couple of years ago. The girls were killed in 2017. The trial court the warrant. The trial court issued the warrant. Law enforcement seized from Allen's home multiple items, including a Sig Sauer gun, knives, casings, and a Carhartt-type jacket with a white and yellow patch on the front pocket. These items featured prominently during Allen's trial. F. Allen denies the bullet is his, that he was bridge guy, or had anything to do with the murders. At the scene, officers found an unspent, unfired .40 caliber Smith & Wesson cartridge. When ISP analyst Melissa Oberg cycled 6 cartridges through Allen's gun, she did not find any markings that matched the marks on the cycled round. Footnote at the bottom, Bridge Guy's coat does not have a patch like Allen's. So Oberg, she could not find any markings that matched the marks on the cycle round at the scene. Thus, she could not establish a link between Allen's gun and the unspent round at the scene. Oberg then fired 4 cartridges from Allen's gun. She compared the markings on the spent cartridges to the markings on the unspent cartridge at the scene and concluded that Allen's gun was the source of some of the markings on the unspent cartridge at the murder scene. After learning of Oberg's conclusion, on October 26, law enforcement interrogated Allen again for about an hour and a half. Detective Holman accused Allen of killing Abby Williams and Liberty German, or at least being involved. Allen explained the very day the police asked anyone on the trail to come forward, "That is what I went for, a walk on the trail and went home, and I did not murder two little girls." Detective Holman repeatedly confronted Allen with Oberg's conclusion that marks on the casing at the scene matched his gun. Each time, Allen denied that the bullet at the scene was from his gun. Holman even claimed the methodology was scientific and like fingerprints. Exhausted and frustrated by Detective Holman's relentless accusations that he murdered Abby and Libby, Allen consistently said he could not tell him what happened to the girls because he does not know. He did not know how that round got between the girls or how they died. He emphatically stated, "I did not murder two little girls." Despite Detective Holman's lying about experts identifying Allen and his voice on the video, Allen continued to deny he was Bridge Guy. Detective Holman tried a different lie, saying 5 witnesses saw Allen with Liberty German and Abigail Williams and a gun. Again, Allen said, "It did not happen, and I don't care how stressed out I get. I am not going to admit to something I had nothing to do with." Detective Holman tried to use Allen's depression against him, claiming it was because he killed 2 little girls. That did not work. Detective Holman even used Allen's wife as an interrogation tool. While Allen was being interrogated, ISP told her that the bullet at the scene matched her husband's gun. When they brought her in to see Allen, he hugged her and said, "It is going to be all right." While left alone together, she asked how his bullet got at the scene, and he repeated what he told Detective Holman. "I am not going to say something I did not do, and I can't explain something I don't understand." He told her, "I know that no bullet from my gun was connected with a murder in any way, shape, or form." ISP lied to Allen's wife too, telling her that a witness identified Allen. Allen assured her they are not going to get away with this and told her, "I am sorry you are having to hurt. I am sorry I am having to go through it." Just a few days, okay, the solitary confinement. This is part A. Solitary confinement. Just a few days after 50-year-old Allen was arrested for the first time in his life, he was sent to the Indiana Department of Correction as a safe keeper, transferring him to the Westville Correctional Unit, a maximum security segregation unit for the worst of the worst. The movies refer to it as the hole, used mostly to punish. Allen was the first safekeeper in any IDOC's employee's memory to be placed in. Pretrial safekeepers with mental health issues are usually placed in a mental health unit. The IDOC knew Allen had major depression disorder and was hospitalized in 2019 for suicidal ideation. He received a D mental health code, the second most severe, entitling him to 1 out-of-cell psychologist visits weekly. During the visits, Allen was shackled and confined. Allen was shackled and confined in a 3-by-3-foot cage, separated from the psychologist. Allen had no face-to-face interaction unless shackled or separated by bars. Outside his cell, he was restrained with leg irons, handcuffs, and a belly chain on a lead. Other Westville inmates and general population lived in dorms, played games, ate together, watched TV, and moved more freely. Allen was placed in a strip cell, stripped of everything but the bare necessities. Allen's cell was 8.4 by 12.5 with a camera, a mattress on a concrete slab, and a bug infestation. His only view was a narrow window facing a razor wire fence. Meals were passed through a door slot. He ate alone on the floor or bed. Allen was recorded 24/7 with suicide companions outside his cell door, writing down his statements and behavior, and guards with video cameras filming his showers, movements outside the cell, and attorneys' meetings. The IDOC knew solitary confinement would worsen Allen's medical issues and even cause psychosis. And their policy restricts the time inmates with serious mental illness can stay in solitary to 30 days. But the IDOC did not apply that policy to Allen, and he remained in the most secure solitary cell in Westville Correction Unit for 13 months. Allen's decompensation. On arrival at the Westville Correction Unit in November of 2022, Allen appeared like a deer in headlights. He was coherent, quiet, and weighed 180 pounds. By April of 2023, he weighed 135 pounds and was psychotic and gravely disabled. Early in custody, Allen maintained innocence and believed solitary was meant to tear him down. He told the psychologist, Dr. Walla, he felt like a broken man after 2 weeks. Allen described a quiet, normal life previously. Allen was extremely devoted to his wife. On November 14th of 2022, he emotionally told her, "If this becomes too much for you, call the detectives and I will tell them whatever they want to know." By January 26th of 2023, Allen was expressing paranoia. In late March and early April, around the time Allen received his discovery and met with his attorneys, Allen's behavior suddenly worsened. Guards thought he was acting up. He refused meals, became nonsensical, spoke of old bear claw, hypnotizing him, and acted like he was from medieval times. He ripped legal mail, washed his face in the toilet, and drank toilet water. He stuck a spork into his genitals and covered himself in feces, spit, and vomit. Video from early April showed Allen frightened, extremely thin, bleeding, shaking, contorting, and interacting with non-existent stimuli. He was pacing back and forth, eating his Bible, and hitting his head on the cell door. On a video from April 12th, he was naked while he flapped his hands, punched the air, counted imaginary objects, pulled feces from his anus and smeared it into food, and marched in place. By April 13th, Allen's health had become dire. The IDOC psychiatrist, Dr. Martin, saw him naked, covered in feces, with brown fluid from his mouth from eating. Dr. Martin found him very psychotic, hallucinating, and incompetent to consent to treatment. On April 14th, the IDOC ordered involuntary medication and found him gravely disabled, a working diagnosis of MDD with psychosis. He had lost an abnormal amount of weight and was not sleeping. Halidol produced minimal improvement. He continued to speak in loose associations about things like nuclear war, poisoning, dying, losing reality, cryogenic eyeballs, and not remembering confessions he had already given.
Yeah, but let's just pump him with more Haldol, even though it's not working, guys.
He also continued to play with his feces. After letting Alan sit in his feces for 2 hours on April 23rd, he was removed from his cell and given a shower. Alan's symptoms continued through May. On May 3rd, Dr. Walla diagnosed Alan with a brief psychotic disorder, noting that he had disorganized speech and behavior, but no delusions or hallucinations. On May 25th, his shot was still not working. Alan paced for 2 hours and banged the back in front of his head on the metal door for about an hour. Despite his self-injury and a visible goose egg on his head, no one checked on him. The next day, Alan had 2 black eyes from banging his head, and on June 5th, IDOC was administered another 30-day involuntary emergent Halidol injection.
It ain't broke, don't fix it. Oh, wait.
On June 20th, 2023, Alan was catatonic and extremely skinny. Guards carried him to the infirmary, strapped in a chair. After his visit, he remained vacant while staff wiped drool from his mouth. That same day, Dr. Martin claimed Alan was coherent, oriented, not psychotic, and had been free of psychosis for 7 weeks, returning to baseline on May 2nd.
What? What?
Right.
So guys, by the way, he's supposed to be presumed innocent at this point. Is this how you should treat someone who's presumed innocent of a crime? Keep him safe, guys. We gotta keep him safe.
Number C, Alan's confessions. Number 1, Alan's family. Alan confessed to his family over the phone April 3rd, May 10th, and May 17th, June 5th, and June 11th. On April 3rd, he told his wife, "I did it. I killed Abby Williams and Liberty German," later saying, "Maybe I did. I think I did." On May 17th, Alan insisted to his mother he killed the girls. The next day, on May 18th, Alan banged his head against his cell door to the point he had a gash. On June 5th and 11th, Alan told his wife he did it, but that he has lost his mind. He is probably going to kill himself, feels like he is already in hell, and does not understand what is happening. From April through June, guards repeatedly heard Alan confess, I killed Abby and Libby amidst bizarre behavior. His statements occurred while he smeared feces, rolled in it, drank toilet water, shouted at his shadow, sang, masturbated, paced, saluted, asked nonsensical questions, hit his head, and asked if he was dead. On April 29th, Alan made a more specific statement to a guard claiming he killed 2 girls in Delphi with a box cutter that he stole from and left in the trash at CVS. He was going to rape them, but he panicked and killed them. He said they were screaming. Just the day before, he was covered in feces. On April 5th, Alan's emotions shifted rapidly. He questioned whether he was God. He slipped a sheet under the door, wanting to confess to the warden. Later, Alan told Dr. Walla, I killed Abby and Libby. I'm sorry. He had intense eye contact, bizarre smiling, and circumstantial thought. Although he would go off on a tangent and sometimes never return to the original topic, Dr. Walla claimed his confession was concise. Alan said he was motivated by sex, but was uncertain whether he had sex with the girls. Alan also confessed to molesting his sister and daughter, claims contradicted by them. 2 days later, Alan asked Dr. Walla if he had confessed. On May 2nd, Alan was very tangential, repeating himself and jumping between topics. He said, I killed Abby and Libby. I will kill everyone. I will wipe out the world after I die. He mentioned World War III, was confusing nightmares and reality. though he must have schizophrenia, was randomly saying methamphetamine and telling people, including Dr. Walla, he loved them. Walla was unable to have a meaningful conversation with him.
I wonder if he confessed to the JFK assassination.
I don't know.
Better go put him in cuffs for that.
On May 3rd, he confessed to following the girls to the bridge when the bullet fell out. And then he said, down the hill. He was going to rape them, but saw a van. He crossed the creek, slit their throats, and covered their bodies with tree branches. He also said he feared missing Easter, though his interactions with Dr. Walla were fake and was paranoid about his safety. After entering a summary into Allen's record, Dr. Walla destroyed her notes. On May 10th,
As we all tend to do.
Yeah. On May 10th, with Dr. Walla present, Allen told his wife, I did this. I killed Abby and Libby, while also insisting he was losing his mind. He continued believing he was dead, that the world would blow up if he fell asleep, that water was poisoned, and that he was reliving the same day. Dr. Walla insisted to podcasts about Allen 3 hours day while commuting to work. Dr. Walla listened to podcasts about Allen 3 hours a day while commuting to work.
Where did she freaking live? I'm sorry, she lived an hour and a half away?
Yeah. Before Allen was arrested, she researched a suspect on the Indiana Department of Corrections database, and after she treated Allen, she posted on social media about the case. Witnesses and trial. Beginning October 17th of 2024, the state tried Allen on 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of felony murder. During the 25-day trial, the state built its case against Allen on 7 points. A, what the jury heard. 1, Bridge Guy. The jury saw the video of Bridge Guy on Liberty's phone. They also heard from 2 of the 4 girls, Rayleigh Voorhees and Bree Wilbur, Blair and Carbaugh. After seeing the video, the witnesses believed they saw Bridge Guy on February 13th. Blair thought she saw him on the platform of the bridge. She described the man as white, possibly in his 20s or 30s, with brown, poofy hair and youthful or boyish appearance. She also believes she saw Abby and Libby approaching the bridge while the man was still on it. Blair's Fitbit data placed her near the bridge at the time of Liberty German's video. Although Carbaugh in 2017 reported seeing a muddy man in a tan coat about 4 p.m. walking west on 300 North towards town, by trial, she claimed the man was muddy and bloody and wearing a blue jacket. Also, surveillance video captured a car like Allen's driving down 300 North at 1:27 p.m. The prosecutor argued that this was Allen shortly before he parked and walked to the trail, and that Carbaugh saw Allen walking back to his car after committing the murders. At trial, no eyewitness identified Allen as Bridge Guy. The prosecutor, however, told the jury that Allen must be Bridge Guy because every eyewitness is adamant the person they saw was Bridge Guy. There's no doubt in their mind. And Blair, according to the prosecutor, must have seen Allen right before the girls because Allen told us he went onto the Monon High Bridge out to the first platform, which is exactly what Betsy Blair told you. Trooper Harshman, who had listened to Allen's jail calls, believed it was Allen's voice on the video. The jury heard, number 2, the bullet. The jury heard from a battle of firearm experts over the bullet. For the state, Oberg testified that when she matched test firings from Allen's gun to the unspent casings at the murder scene, she applied the association of firearm and took tool mark examiner's methodology. She gave an error rate for the methodology of 2.2% for false positives and 2.87 for false negatives. She
Where did she
discussed,
even get those numbers?
I have no
Like,
idea.
I'm really curious. Where they she? I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you. That's just a crazy. That's just a number out of your butt that she's pulling.
Well, I don't think they ever explained any of where this came from. That's part of the major issue right there.
Trust me, bro. That's where it comes from.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm so sorry, Amy.
Oh, that's okay.
I'm
No,
sorry.
you're good. Oberg discussed studies and articles that she reviewed to apply the methodology. Oberg admitted that the AFTE methodology is subjective, but she tested that in 17 years of applying it, she was unaware of ever making a mistake in identification. During closing, the prosecutor told the jury that she has never been wrong. For the defense, Eric Warren, an expert in applying the AFTE methodology, testified that comparing tool marks on an unspent cartridge with tool marks on a spent test firings is akin to comparing apple to oranges. And in his opinion, there was insufficient agreement on the tool marks to match Allen's gun with the unspent casing found at the murder scene. Number 3, timeline. Christopher Cecil testified regarding the movement and health data on Liberty German's phone. The girls encountered Bridge Guy at 2:13 p.m. and Liberty German's phone stopped registering movement at 2:32 p.m. He summarized the movement data as follows: 1:31 and 40 seconds to 2:08 and 48 seconds, there were 1,682 steps walked. At 2:08 and 48 seconds to 2:18 and 48 seconds, there were 414.38 meters walked. From 2:25:22 to 2:32 and 39 seconds, 2 flights climbed and 5 final movement recorded. The state argued that this activity overlapped with Allen being on the trails and Allen completing the murders and leaving the scene by 3:56, where he was seen by Carball walking on 300 North. Allen contested this timeline through Stacy Eldridge, a former FBI forensic analysis. She testified that someone inserted wire headphones or an auxiliary cable into Liberty German's phone at 5:45 p.m. and removed it at 10:32 p.m. This would silence the phone. And she noted that an incoming phone call occurred moments before the headphones or auxiliary cable were plugged into the phone, which would have silenced the call. In response to Eldred's testimony, the state asked Cecil whether water damage could be responsible for Eldred's findings. Over a hearsay objection, Cecil testified he Googled it during the trial and found some unspecified, non-peer-reviewed troubleshooting forums reporting that water damage or dirt within the headphone socket could mimic headphones being inserted. Number 4, confessed motive. When the state arrested Allen, it had no explanation for the murders. However, the state argued that once placed in solitary, Allen confessed to the crime and a motive. While gravely disabled, Allen confessed to guards Dr. Walla and his family. On May 3rd, 2023, he told Dr. Walla he was going to rape these girls, but panicked and killed them. He said they were screaming. The prosecutor argued that the jury, there were people on the bridge who heard nothing. The prosecutor agreed that the jury should believe Allen's confessions, despite his psychosis, relying on the opinions of Dr. Walla, the guards, and Trooper Harshman, who reviewed Allen's video and calls. The prosecutor claimed that Allen's confessions were logical and organized, and the product of free will and his newly found religion. Almost every guard testified Allen's bizarre behavior was orchestrated and not the product of mental illness. One guard said
Dr.
he
Professor
knew,
Guard.
right. One guard said he knew Allen was truthful in his confession because of the look in his eye. Some guards claimed inmates commonly smear or eat feces as a tool for attention. None are mental health professionals or knew Allen's mental health code. Each time Allen confessed to Dr. Walla, she said he was not delusional, hallucinating, or psychotic. Although Allen expressed confusion and memory gaps, she suspected he was feigning or acting bizarrely. On cross, she admitted she may have been wrong and Allen might have been genuine. With hindsight, she was on the fence.
You know, none of these numerous confessions were recorded either, right? Like none of these ones happen to be recorded. I just
The
find that
one I
very
know the one to Dr. Walla was not.
yeah, no, but I'm saying it sounds like he did it a couple different times to Wally. He said stuff like that.
Right.
None of them
Well,
were.
they should have been videotaped. I mean, the phone calls were recorded, but they did leave out
Convenient.
the phone calls hours before he actually made this confession. He did call his dad, and
Escape context.
yeah, right. So the state introduced 31 suicide observation reports containing Dr. Walla's opinions. She continued to find Allen non-psychotic while documenting paranoia, delusional thoughts, confusion about being dead, and self-injury. She at times labeled him as feigning for secondary gain. The day before he was deemed gravely disabled, she wrote he could be exaggerating or consciously deteriorating. When he ate feces, she called the behavior unclear. Dr. Martin believed Allen was psychotic, but in remission after a mid-April Haldol shot and back to baseline by May 2nd. Walla, he described psychotic symptoms, yet concluded Allen was much improved. When either doctor acknowledged psychosis, they attribute it to factors other than solitary. Regarding Allen's phone call confessions, Trooper Harshman said Allen's demeanor was calm and solemn, and he was not under duress or stress. He opined Allen acted this way for attention. Allen called Dr. Westcott a neuropsychologist who opined Allen entered IDOC with MDD and physically and mentally decompensated, showing early signs by December and March, becoming psychotic April through June with residual symptoms later. Allen's solitary confinement, sleep loss, and starvation produced sensory deprivation, delirium, and psychosis. Dr. Westcott believed Allen was psychotic and delirious when confessing to Dr. Walla. After reviewing all records and videos and evaluating Allen for days, she found no evidence of malingering. Dr. Grasson, a psychiatrist experienced with solitary confinement cases, testified that such environments cause psychotic delirium, confusion, and disorientation. Delirious behavior often becomes grotesquely regressive, including smearing feces, sexual acting out, self-harm, and suicide. On recovery, memory is often absent. He had no doubt Allen was delirious and saw signs of a false memory common in delirium, where a belief evolves into a perceived recollection. Some people will say, I think I did it. And after time start perceptualizing the event. The more someone tries to remember, the more concrete and distorted the memory becomes, like a game of telephone. Number 5, a detail only the killer would know.
Perceptualizing.
Perceptualizing, there it is. Let me take a drink of water here real quick.
Yeah, you need it. Terry volunteered to talk if you want a little break.
Yeah, you want me to take over for a few minutes?
Hold on. Let me see.
You've been
Let me
working
get
so
through.
hard, girl.
Yeah.
I know you want to
Let
get
me.
through the good stuff.
Yeah. I'll get through the. Let me get through these next couple of pages. Brad Weber, who lives near where the girls were found, told the jury he left work in Lafayette around 2:02 p.m. and drove his white cargo van directly home, arriving around 2:22 to 2:27. The state claimed that Allen confessed to Walla that he attempted to rape the girls but was scared after seeing a van, which forced him to flee with the girls across the creek. Allen's statement, the state told the jury, contained a detail only the killer would know. The state argued Weber's arrival home in his van was what interrupted Allen, causing him to take LG and AW across the creek to kill them. Number 6, the murder scene. The murder scene was unusual and complex. LG was naked and AW was wearing LG's clothes. AW's right leg was positioned underneath her left. Both girls' throats were cut with a sharp instrument. However, the injuries were different. LG had so many incised wounds along her neck that it was difficult to determine the number. 3 major vessels were injured. There was a scalloped edge along an incision. AW's throat was cut only once and not as deeply as LG's throat. AW was likely murdered while wearing Liberty German's clothes. AW died in the location where she was found. But after LG died, her 200-pound body was moved several yards to its final resting place. This created a V formation with the girls' bodies. Sticks were deliberately arranged on the girls, covering no more than 3% of their bodies. It would have taken up to 20 minutes for Abby Williams to die. That's horrific. I can't. 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's a really, really, really sad. I don't think we ever knew that, did we?
No. And it's just stated so bluntly in here. It just makes me sick to my stomach. That poor baby. Although LG's injuries were more significant, it would have taken her between 5 and 10 minutes to die. The blood pattern on Abby Williams' hands was noteworthy. When injured, people instinctively reach for major wounds, getting blood on their hands and sleeves. LG had substantial blood on her hands, but Abby had little to no blood on her hands or sleeves. The state's blood splatter expert had never seen clean hands and sleeves in a case involving this amount of blood loss. The absence of blood may be consistent with unconsciousness or restraint, but there were no defensive wounds, bruising, blunt force trauma, or ligature marks on either girl. The bodies were lying in the prone position, yet both girls' faces had blood patterns flowing upward against gravity over their chin and face. Thus, something during the murders, a person articulated the girls' torsos and necks above their chins. It was clear someone lifted Liberty's body to create the flow pattern. Abigail had a similar
Can you stop for just a second?
Uh-huh.
I don't know that any of this has ever come out the way we're reading it now. And I'm a visual person, so I'm trying to figure out if they're saying they put them upside down.
Well, you can't. And we were aware of this. This was something that was discussed at trial by
But
Cecil.
like in a really weird. Well, no, I don't think it was by
Huh?
Cecil. It was by Cicero, I believe,
Oh,
and
Cicero, yes.
he kind of did it in a really roundabout kind of way, where it really, yeah, where he kind of like used a lot of words but said very little. Is kind of how I remember it, and it really
Yeah,
made it
that's why I
unclear.
didn't. Yeah, I didn't
Andrea kind of interpreted it really well.
Um,
Andrea was the one who interpreted it really well, but yeah, saying Gallon could not have hoisted those girls up.
yeah, no, and that's the significance of this. Now, in the leaked crime scene photos that many of us have seen, the photos are somewhat, I would call them like light whitewashed. They're not, the coloring on them is not real strong. On Liberty's face, though, you do see the the blood, the angle of the blood going upward, which is very bizarre. Because where they are, I mean, I've been to the crime scene and it's flat land. Um, so how she would have ever been inverted, um, I mean, the only way that I could think, one way would be if she was lifted by her feet, but she would have had to have been lifted up high enough for the blood flow to, run up her chin, up over her face. And the other significant thing was that at trial they discussed Liberty being upright when she was wounded. Well, with the amount of blood loss, and the amount of wounds, the front of her torso and her chest, you would have been completely covered in blood. And it is not.
Unless they threw her over their shoulder. Someone picked her up and threw her over their shoulder. And that explains how it went upward instead of downward.
Well,
It would have been like an instant thing if that were to happen. Like I know that like tethering something to like a tree and hanging it by its like foot is kind of something that people do with like when they get deer or certain animals when they're butchering them. So I don't know. That's just a thought I had.
Well, there have been several people, throughout, the all of the vault episodes that we've done, talking about the injuries to Libby resembling somebody who would, hunt and, drain a deer
Butcher
of their
hogs.
blood.
Well, butcher hogs
Because
too, and
And that makes
Carroll
sense.
County,
Yeah.
because
Carroll County's
Libby's,
the number 1 hog producer in the state.
Yeah. And the whole cutting the throat that way, that's something
yeah,
that
because
would be for hogs.
her cuts were vertical. They were up and down. They weren't side. They weren't like someone. To me, my personal opinion is that her attacker cut her from the front, because she was cut, vertical, top to bottom, in multiple
So
areas.
someone else have had to be holding her then, or she would have been hoisted somehow
Or she would have
off the
been,
ground.
yeah. I think that Libby would have been a fighter, and for there
Or
not
she
to
would
be
have
any
been knocked
defensive
out.
wounds.
Somebody hit her hard enough to stun her a little bit, but I don't remember
There's no
hearing about
contusions on her head or nothing,
That's
right?
what I was going to say. Yeah. Yeah. That's what I was about to
Yeah,
say.
I feel like that would
And
have happened, but
and then Abby's wound was on the left side of her neck. Whoops, sorry. Abby's wound was on the
spoiler.
left side of her neck, and it was at an angle, um, and her hands were in like like in a fighter position. Like her hands were, like her elbows were out, but her fists were up towards her breasts, like in between her chin and her breasts, and just there. And they appeared to still be she had her hands withdrawn in her sleeves, like you would do when you're cold. So that it is possible that she was restrained and just held there.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, go back for a second to Libby's Layla quit to Libby's cuts. You said it wasn't like. I mean, I've seen the photos, but no, I didn't dwell on them. But it's like someone was standing in front of her. Is what you're saying? The way that she was.
well, I don't think it would not be, to me, it would be impossible for Libby to acquire those wounds from somebody who was behind her. And
Okay, I got
the amount of wounds that she had, it's almost as if somebody was in front of her and someone could have been restraining her and they cut her. Because like if you stand in front of the wall with it, let's say a box cutter, and you cut vertical, top to bottom. She was cut on both sides of her neck, top to bottom. There were anywhere from, I believe, if I remember correctly, 3 to 5 wounds. And one wound, they could, I believe the pathologist, Dr. Kaur, said he couldn't tell if it was a separate incision or if they had gone over an original incision, which, for those of you who listen to the Reese Davis interviews, that is significant to something that he was told by Ron and Keegan Kline about
Something only the killer would have known?
something only the killer would have known.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay, so let me get back to it. We're on page 40. We're making good time here. The absence of blood may be consistent with unconsciousness or restraint, but there were no defensive wounds, bruising, blunt force trauma, or ligature marks on either girl. The bodies were lying in a prone position, yet both girls' faces had blood patterns flowing upward against gravity and over their chin and face. Thus, sometime during the murders, a person articulated the girls' torsos and necks above their chins. It was clear someone lifted Liberty German's body to create that flow pattern. Abby Williams had the same similar pattern, which meant her body was also articulated to a position where her neck was higher than her chin. This occurred while Abby Williams was wearing Liberty German's clothes. About 4 feet off the ground, there was a notable blood pattern on a tree in Liberty German's blood.
It was just a coincidence, guys.
The state performed a sexual assault kit on both girls and found no physical evidence of sexual assault. Despite testing the sexual assault kit, hundreds of clippings from the clothing and swabs from the girls' bodies, cartridge, and cell phone, law enforcement found no DNA from Allen. The state told the jury that Allen controlled the girls, swapped Abby Williams' clothes, and articulated their bodies, and moved Liberty German all by himself before fleeing the scene by 4 p.m. The state's witnesses repeatedly claimed Allen used the sticks as camouflage, and he moved Liberty German's body to make it harder to see.
Sticks were just dropped there.
Making it harder to see, that, I'm sorry. Been there. If anybody was standing on across the creek, they could have been seen. If anybody walked along that creek, especially on the side that the girls were found on, they were right there. And I should have taken a measuring tape with me to the crime scene and measured from Liberty's tree to the creek's edge. Because if it's 50 feet, like they say, it's barely 50 feet, and 50 feet really, when you look at a measurement, it's not that far. And to further reiterate about the Apple Health data and the phone movement, it is not a 2-story height climb from the creek up to the crime scene. No way.
I also want to point out that this is something that we'll be looking at in our next episode, I believe, this weekend. But you could have also probably seen the crime scene area from where the bridge guy video was taken. There's no obstructions except for like bare trees, but even then they would have stood out.
The trees would have been, bare, and even going down. Okay, if you get to the private drive and you were to make your way down that secondary hill, which
you got a straight shot to it.
Right. I mean, you would be elevated. You're at all of those marking points from the south end of the top of the bridge down to the private drive, down that secondary hill, which from my viewpoint being there, I don't know how they got down, because it's a straight drop off. Now I know that Julie had said at one point in time there was a path. I had to go maybe further over to the left towards the bridge to find that path. Just didn't get that far because we got caught being out there. But all of those points, you're elevated. You would have been able to see.
And if anyone wants to get a little preview, go to the Facebook group. I posted the LiDAR map that we will be looking at. I think you'll get a really good idea for the terrain, and you'll be like, oh, shoot, there was only one way down. Oh, shoot. They
Well,
could have seen everything from the bridge.
and not only could they see that place, I've not been there, but enough people I know have. You could have heard something. If
Yes.
they would have been yelling and screaming, and they had to be fighters. There would have been noise. Someone would have heard something.
I mean, it carries like otherworldly when there's like when you're in a ravine, it carries. Yeah, and over the water too. I mean, but it just carries when it's bouncing off of like the earth, like from the other side. It's gonna go. Yep, DB. There's a LiDAR map. If you look in the Facebook group, I posted it. It's Indiana did LiDAR. It's a 2016 to 2020. That's when it was made, so it's pretty accurate.
Okay.
I think the yellow, Amy answered their question about where the yellow rope, the crime scene tape, was in relation to where they were found. And also, I wanted you to just reiterate to everybody how close to the water's edge they were.
Well, there's, I do have a couple, I actually think I have a couple other videos that I need to still upload. But if you go to Case by Case, the channel under videos, or to the playlist where it says Delphi trip, I do have a couple videos in there where I videotaped the crime scene and how close it was to the water. And I even walked up to the water's edge. I think that video's been uploaded where you can see, the drop from where the crime scene is down to the water. And it's literally, I would say at most, it's about 3 feet. So you are not going to get a 2-story elevation change with that type of incline. Now, going up, if you were to go past the crime scene towards the back of the cemetery or toward Logan's house, you absolutely are going to do it would be more than 2-story elevation. So, but it is the crime scene is very close to the water, very close. And it is so close that hypothetically, if everything would have taken place right there, it would be it's like a killer would be operating out in plain sight. Now the yellow, if you're talking about the yellow rope at the crime scene, now there's been a lot of confusion over that. I do know that the crime scene investigators discussed that they used a yellow rope to basically track their movement at the crime scene. So they knew so they searched areas, and it provided them a pathway. It served as several purposes. It helped them, stay in a line and search the area, but it also allowed them to have a pathway that had been searched and cleared for them to access in and out of the crime scene. But there was one thing that I did want to point out here that I found interesting is going back and listening to the crime scene investigators talk. They started at an outward area. They said about the size of a football field crime scene taped off. And then they worked their way in and into the bodies. Then they searched all the area around the bodies and they laid down tarps. But in that order, they never once described finding the bullet before they laid down the tarps. I found that interesting. Okay, I'm going to keep reading. Although the girls' injuries were different and possibly caused by multiple weapons or different mechanisms, the state's pathologists speculated that a single blade, such as a box cutter, caused all the injuries, including the scallop mark. The blood stain on the tree, according to the state, was an inverted L transferred from Liberty German's arm as she propped herself against the tree. and a female hair and multiple incomplete profiles were seen contamination or background DNA from the girls sharing clothes or through incidental contact with people they knew.
Now it's
According
from her
to-
arm, not her hand.
I thought they testified that it was her hand.
Same.
According to the state, it could not find Alan's DNA because the blood from Abby and Libby was overwhelming the scene and competing with any DNA left behind. Oh, boo. Number 7, the manner, quality, and thoroughness of the investigation. At trial, the jury heard about the state's investigation from the day the girls went missing to a few days later when Alan met with Doolin. The state then told the jury to fast forward 5.5 years to the volunteer finding Doolin's report in September 2022. The jury heard nothing, maybe very little, regarding the manner, quality, and thoroughness of the investigation between the murders in 2017 and Alan's arrest in 2022. On November 11th of 2024, following a 25-day trial, a jury found Alan guilty of 2 counts of murder. Alan appeals. Below is the evidence the defense was prohibited from offering the jury. What the jury did not hear. Number 1, bridge guy. The jury never saw that sketch below, which is the man Blair saw on the bridge when AW and LG were approaching. The sketch does not look like Alan, who in February of 2016 was short, 44 years old, with closely cropped hair. Blair rated this sketch a 10 out of 10 for accuracy. In 2019, she reaffirmed her confidence in her sketch and insisted that she could identify Bridge Guy if she saw him again. Nor did the jury hear that Blair, and at one point the ISP, believed the man she saw was not the man Carball saw, muddy and bloody. I think it's wrong. Number 2, the bullet. The jury never heard that the firearm and tool mark evidence is flawed and unscientific. Alan proffered expert witness William Tobin to explain the scientific community's criticism of the AFTE methodology. Tobin is a nationally recognized forensic metallurgist. He has extensive experience in metallurgy, bullet and lead analysis and tool mark principles, along with a background in statistics. He is familiar with the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology, which has criticized the AFTE methodology of tool mark identification. Tobin reviewed Oberg's work and was prepared to explain the flaws in the AFTE methodology. He has testified in over 297 cases, and he has been recognized by state high courts as an expert on this topic. Number 3, confessed motive. The jury never heard Alan's confused, disjointed ramblings and screams during the months that Dr. Walla said Alan was making logical and organized confessions. The trial court permitted Alan to play 15 videos of him in solitary to impeach his confessions, but required Alan to mute them. The excluded audio showed the following. Video 972. Guards extracted a skinny, wide-eyed Alan with blood on his forehead. Alan screamed for his dad, asked guards to hold his hands, and yelled, "Roger, Marvin, wait for it." Video 980, April 13th. Guards ordered Alan to cuff up. Naked and confused, he clutched the sink and shook. When officers entered, Alan begged to be put on an airplane and told them not to believe his last confession. Video 1002, April 17th. While being transported to see Dr. Walla, another inmate yelled, "Kill yourself, Richard Allen." Video 1007 on April 17th. During transport for a forced injection, Allen screamed, spoke incoherently, asked for his mommy and daddy, rambled about suicide and time travel, and within 7 minutes claimed to be both the stupidest and smartest person ever, and repeated, "Wait for it." A guard told him the games are over and commented on feces on him. Allen responded tangentially, "Rocky Balboa is my favorite actor. Clap on, clap off." A guard noted the feces has been on him for a while. Video
That was just one of
1000.
his suicide companions, Amy.
Huh?
That was just one of his suicide companions, Amy.
Mm-hmm.
He just got the job description completely wrong.
Video 1026 on April 21st. During a haircut, Allen mostly stared into space. Confused, he responded, "Leave the top," when asked if he wanted his face shaved. Video 10,150 or 1152, April 28th. During a shower transport, Allen spoke incoherently, repeatedly saying, "There is a God. Please don't do this, and make it painless." With feces on his face, he asked to be euthanized and whether his wife was present. He said he was King Michael, claimed he had started World War III, tried to save his family and Donald Trump, sang hymns, quoted scripture, and asked to be chronologically frozen.
Cryologically?
Cryologically frozen?
That would make more sense.
Video 1201, June 20th. Guards carried a catatonic, drooling Allen to the infirmary. The medical professional discussed with Allen his cholesterol and blood pressure rather than his non-responsiveness and involuntary jerking. Allen stared blankly when asked the date or the season. Allen asked this court to watch the videos with the sound, especially, and then they list the numbers. Also, the jury did not hear Allen the morning he started confessing tell his family in 3 intertwined calls that he was confused and losing his mind. In the first call at 3:12 a.m. on April 3rd, Allen told his dad he was losing his mind and was uncertain how much longer he was going to be lucid. Allen said, "You guys know I would never do something like I've been accused of." Allen felt he had been mentally tortured, like he was in Guantanamo Bay, and that there were drugs in his coffee and Kool-Aid. In the call the jury heard at 5:14 a.m., Allen told his wife for the first time he thinks he killed Abby and Libby, and evidently did it. Allen could not remember what he told his dad in the earlier call. Then, in a third call at 8:45 a.m., a panicked Allen told his wife he was not sure if his original call to her was a dream. He said he was not drinking the water in the coffee and questioned whether the attorneys who were coming to visit him were his attorneys. The jury only heard the second call with the confession, along with Trooper Harshman's opinion that the Allen showed no indication he was under duress or stress when he made that admission. Number 4, a detail only the killer would know. The jury never heard that Allen could not have walked the girls across the creek to kill them after seeing a van driving down a lane, as he confessed. The state had video showing Weber's van arriving home 25 minutes after the pause in movement of Liberty German's phone and nearly 15 minutes after it stopped moving altogether. Specifically, security camera footage from Weber's neighbor showed him arriving home at 2:44. And the state also had a report prepared by the FBI, which confirmed that Weber's cell phone arrived at home around 2:50 p.m. The jury also never heard that Allen confessed to details that the real killer would know were wrong, including that Allen said he shot the girls, The judge prohibited Allen's expert, Dr. Gracian, from identifying Allen's signs of being in a state of delirium and hallmarks of a false memory. One such hallmark was the facts Allen got wrong. Allen's alternative exculpatory explanation of the scene. The jury never heard. From the beginning, many investigators believed and investigated the girls' murder as part of a Norse pagan ritual, and that the usual and complex scene had textbook features of such. There was always a discussion among law enforcement that this may be a ritual murder and that the sticks were Nordic runes. Also, many officers believed the scene was too complex for just one person to be involved. Within the first week, the Carroll County Sheriff enlisted the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit to evaluate whether the sticks related to pagan rituals. After examining the evidence, the BAU declined to exclude pagan ritual as a plausible explanation for the murder scene. Possible a new believer or rogue believer in Odinism was involved in the case. A Purdue professor also consulted law enforcement on whether the sticks were runically inspired. He found it quite plausible these markings constitute an instruction inspired by Norse runes or modern recreations thereof. Law enforcement consulted with an undercover ISP trooper regarding the sticks and the blood stain on the tree. The officer was familiar with Norse pagan symbols through his covert intelligence, and he agreed the blood,
Oh, this part's very interesting.
Yeah, they
This
did
right
consult.
here. This
He was an undercover officer.
Oh man, I would have loved to know where he was, like undercover. I obviously you can't, but like, was it Crawfordsville, Rushville? I don't know.
Good question. And he agreed the blood on the tree resembled the pagan Fehu rune. And he found similarities between the stick formations on the girls and pagan bind runes. Once Allen was charged with the murders, the defense team consulted a nationally recognized expert, Dawn Perlmutter, who found 7 features of a Norse pagan ritual. They include location. She explained that Norse pagan follows a Norse pantheon of gods like Thor and Odin. They have nature-based ideology where events and rituals are conducted outdoors, in wooded areas, and near water bodies. This murder occurred outdoors in a clearing and near a creek. The date.
Cemeteries sometimes too.
The date. Norse pagan rituals often occur on Norse holidays or events. The Nordic holiday Valsblot, which honors Odin's son, Vali, begins at sundown on February 13th and continues until February 14th. The girls went missing near sundown on February 13th, and they were found the following day. Means used. Ritual killings often involve a knife or a ceremonial knife. And here, the girls were killed with a knife that made an unusual scalloped mark. Sticks. Ritualistic crimes usually involve symbolism at the scene. And with Norse pagan, the symbolism would include arranging natural objects in a specific way, like sticks and runes, and blooding the runes. These practices are integral to the magical thinking involved in Norse pagan rituals. Here, the stick arrangement showed intentional symbolism. It is difficult to explain the sticks as hiding the bodies. Absolutely not working that way. They're not functioning that way. The stick arrangements on Abby Williams mirrored the Norse rune Gibo, and the intentionally placed stick formation on Liberty looked like the Nordic bind rune. Manner of death. Ritual sacrifices often involve blood loss and torture. The girls' throats were cut and they suffered a long, prolonged blood loss, which is indicative of a sacrificial offering or initiation type. Body arrangement. In rituals, the sacrifice will be displayed or arranged at the scene in a manner that is significant to the group. And an upside down hanging body is an important element of Norse paganism because Odin hung from a tree for 9 days before discovering runes. Like Abby Williams' positioning, the classic image of Odin depicts him with one leg bent behind the other. Unusual blood pattern. Finally, a ritual sacrifice would involve an atypical or symbolic blood pattern. And here, the blood pattern on the F tree appeared to look like a Norse pagan Fehu rune. The manner, thoroughness, and quality of the investigation.
Thank you, Michelle.
What did she do?
20 case X case gift memberships.
Thank you, Michelle. She's
is this a good time?
she's always our giver.
I love her. I just want to point out one thing that Anna Lisette said. I thought this was actually really interesting. A fairly new channel suggests the sticks at the crime scene were intended to pose the bodies until rigor developed. And that makes a lot of sense, she says, because positioning was more important than anything else, maybe. And I think that's a really good theory.
That is a really good theory.
Thank you for bringing that up. No, I'm not shocked at all that they went with the ritualistic killing because I think that it was such an issue because you have to appeal to what the judges' rulings. You have to say that it's the mistakes that they made, and this was definitely part of the process where she denied them the ability to do it. So I think this is a pretty easy one.
Okay, Terry, do you want to take over for just a little bit?
Yep, I'm good. Okay, so tell me, you're on unusual.
We're on page 51 at the very top, number 6.
Okay, can you scroll through it because I've got to read it on my other screen. How can I scroll through
How's your dog, Layla?
I took care of her. Thanks.
She's a monster?
Yes, she's being a monster today.
I love that.
Okay, can I open this up a little bit, Amy, so I can read it?
What do you mean?
Okay, I just opened it up. Okay. All right, 6. The manner,
I have a link to it if you want me to just give you a link to the document.
Well, no, I have the link to it. The problem is I want to be able to scroll it so other people can read it too.
Oh, fair. That's a good point. Sorry about that, guys.
That's okay. 6, the manner, thoroughness, and quality of the investigation. The jury never heard, is this where we left off? Yeah. The jury never heard how law enforcement bungled the investigation into the ritual killing or suspects connected to Norse paganism. ISP disregarded Brad Holder, the father of Abby's boyfriend, and Holder's friend, Patrick Westfall, our favorite Patrick Westfall, as promising alternate suspects because they lost evidence, mishandled interviews, and conducted a poor investigation. 6A, investigation into ritual killing. After examining the scene, can you still hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right, good. After examining the scene, several officers believed the scene was too complex for just one person to be involved. When the BAU evaluated the murder scene, it found it noteworthy that AW Abby was clothed. Allowing Abby to dress ahead of time suggests the suspect felt differently toward her, including a possibly heightened level of guilt or regret, or at least compared to Libby. Law enforcement explored a group of pagans connected to Abby Williams. In the weeks leading to the murders, Abby had been talking with a boy, LH, which that's Logan, I think, Logan Holder, and meeting up with him a few times. She kept this relationship secret from her family. On the day she was murdered, Abby invited Logan to meet her on the trails. Logan had school, so he declined. While law enforcement was seeking for the girls on February 14th, they learned about Logan and Abby's secret relationship, pulled Logan out of class in Logansport, and searched his phone. That moment, Logan texted his father, Brad Holder, "She's missing."
Well, that's ominous.
Yeah, right?
No name, just she is missing.
Yeah, And of course he knew who it was, but later he claims he never heard of her. Lost and missing interviews. On February 17th, 2017, law enforcement interviewed both Logan and what's got both LH and Holder. I guess that means Brad and Logan. By then, law enforcement already suspected the murder scene involved a pagan ritual. During his interview, Holder reported being involved in a pagan tribe and spending every weekend in Delphi engaging in pagan rituals with Westfall and 5 or 6 others, including women. These rituals involved animal sacrifice and human bloodletting. Holder admitted knowing about Abby and Logan's relationship, but he denied ever meeting her. Law enforcement recorded Holder's interview, but the Delphi police recorded over their only copy before August 2017, permanently deleting it. You just can't make this up. Only a one-page narrative remains. According to that narrative, Holder told police he owned a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson, but law enforcement never collected it, nor did they collect his cell phone. On February 19th, 2017, law enforcement interviewed Westfall. They failed to record this interview. Only a 5-paragraph narrative remains. According to this narrative, Westfall knew the woods where the girls were murdered very well. He reported knowing the girls, but denied ever meeting them. He also reported being a religious leader for local pagans, and he wore a necklace to the interview representing his efforts to pledge the Vinlanders, a pagan social club. There is no indication law enforcement asked Westfall whether he owned a .40 caliber firearm. Westfall's phone was not searched at that time. I mean, why would you, right? It's only logical. Sorry. Alibi investigation.
No,
When
please.
asked for an,
No, please. I love your commentary. It's good.
I can't not do commentary. When asked for an alibi, Westfall claimed he was at home with his minor son, and Holder told the officers he was at work at Liberty Landfill. On April 13th, 2017, officers visited the landfill to investigate and spoke with an employee, Susan Case, who provided a printout showing Holder swiped out of work at 2:45 p.m., which was 30 minutes after the Bridge Guy video. Case invited the officers to review video to confirm the printout's accuracy, but they declined, nor did they interview other employees. Yeah.
Let's just not cross our T's and dot our I's, guys. Let's just trust me, bro.
And if I remember correctly, his clock out that day was well after the time that he normally got off work.
And remember, in that interview, they proved that he could have handed that card to somebody. And when they questioned her about it, she said, well, they just don't do that. It never happens. Okay.
Right. And,
right.
and his best friend worked with him. And he also that same day checked in on his phone at the workout facility prior to 2:45 when he's off work.
Yeah.
And and he's on Facebook even, I think, saying some stuff.
He was on Facebook.
There.
Yeah. Yep. Unified Command marked Holder as a cleared suspect. Tipsters continue to identify Holder as Bridge Guy. Tipsters repeatedly called and reported Holder as a person of interest. Holder posts half-dead women and shows fascination with symbols out of tree branches. Check the father of one of the girl's boyfriends. His name is Brad Holder. These are all tips that came in there in quotes. He also fits somewhat the description. Each time a tip came in, law enforcement marked it cleared, nothing further, covered, or alibi confirmed. Layla quit. Sometime around March 2017, Detective Purdy interviewed Holder to get his assistance in connecting the murders to North paganism. Because Holder was not a suspect, Purdy did not record or document this interview with a report. D. Unified Command declines to re-interview despite reports Holder is posting pictures of young girls believed to be deceased with sticks placed over their bodies, end quote. In April 12, 2017, Shortly before taking medical leave, Trooper Winters received a call from a tipster, Ryan Bush. Is it Boucher or Butcher?
Boucher.
Whatever
Boucher.
you want.
Okay. Who shared, well, we'll call him Ryan. Ryan shared pictures from Holder's social media. Winters found a concerning similarity between the murders and pictures posted on Holder's social media. Those pictures depicted young girls believed to be deceased with sticks placed over their bodies. Winters also noted similarity between the stick formation on Abby and a bind rune Holder tattooed or drew on his hand. There's a quote, there's a bind rune on my hand. Basically, I took a Gebo rune, and an Isa rune, and I made a bind rune, end quote. Holder's social media also featured him holding guns and homemade knives. Williams immediately recommended to his superiors that law enforcement investigate Holder further, which they declined to do, claiming his alibi was cleared by the FBI. Winters was not satisfied and urged the ISP to conduct its own investigation. No further action was taken. In 2018, Holder displayed a painting he made of Odin upside down with his right leg tucked behind his left, just like Abby Williams' legs. Holder's painting also featured a red Fehu rune. Officers continued to find other social media posting from Holder that mimicked the crime scene, but law enforcement declined to interview Holder again. I mean, Holder could have come in and said, I did it. And they would have said, you know what? You're cleared.
You were clear, buddy.
Pagans finally reevaluated. Once the state charged Allen, his defense team insisted that Holder and Westfall receive another look. When law enforcement re-examined Holder, he changed his story about knowing Abby Williams. Back in 2017, he told law enforcement he never actually met Abby. But in August 2023, he told law enforcement he met her once at, that's the exhibit. And during a deposition.
Let Layla speak.
She's just pitching a fit over here. She's just like, she just doesn't like whatever's out front. And during a deposition in 2024, he said he met Abby twice. At least one of these encounters occurred shortly before Abby Williams' murder at West Hall's home. That sentence doesn't make a lot of sense. At least one of those encounters occurred shortly before her murder at West. Okay, I got it. Yeah, the encounter occurred at Westfall's home shortly before her murder, is how that should say.
Oh.
At the insistence, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, because the way it's worded, it's like she was murdered at Westfall's home, and that's not it. At the insistence of Allen's counsel, law enforcement finally. Huh?
Maybe she was.
Well, there's the point right there. At the insistence of Allen's counsel, law enforcement finally examined Westfall's alibi on August 17th, 2023. No time like the present. If you can't get there on time, just get there. Westfall's son, who was a minor when the murders occurred, could not remember if he was home with his dad when the girls went missing. This time, law enforcement collected Westfall's phone, but he deleted data before turning it over. On April 4th, 2024, Allen's counsel deposed Case, the Liberty Landfill HR manager. On February 2017, Liberty Landfill was operating two staggered, overlapping shifts, one from 5 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. and a second from 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. On the day the girls went missing, Holder was scheduled to work from 5 a.m. to 1:30, but his badge swiped out during the second shift around 2:45. Holder did not have sole custody of his badge. His badge was on a public rack outside the view of cameras and accessible to other employees, including second shift. There was no lack. Huh?
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was no lock on the badges, and Holder's name was prominent on his badge. If someone left when they were supposed to, but somebody else clocked that person out an hour or so later, would that be known? Answer, no. When the state moved to exclude any reference to the state's investigation into third parties, the trial court held a hearing on the motion in July 2024. At the hearing, Holder's wife testified that in 2018, Holder told her he had a fight with Westfall because Westfall wanted to up from animal slaughter to a different kind of sacrifice. He also testified that Holder claimed that Westfall killed Abby Williams with others and that she needed to keep her mouth shut about it. Summary of argument. Unconstitutional search. Amy, you want to hop back in, or are you okay with me?
No, I can hop back in.
Okay.
Unconstitutional search. The trial court committed reversible error by admitting evidence seized under an unconstitutional warrant and by denying Allen a Franks hearing. Detective Liggett obtained the warrant for Allen's home only by omitting and altering witness descriptions to connect Allen to Bridge Guy, and by misrepresenting that Allen admitted he wore a blue Carhartt, like Bridge Guy. These misrepresentations and omissions misled the judge into believing multiple witnesses saw Allen and his car, when in fact they described someone else and a different car. Once the affidavit is corrected, there is no probable cause. Unprecedented confinement. Allen's confessions were involuntary and the product of grave mental disability caused by 13 months of maximum security pre-trial solitary confinement, which exceeded the IDOC policy and caused psychosis, paranoia, and confusion while state actors were indifferent in his deterioration. Admission of these statements violated both federal due process and Indiana's protections against unnecessary rigor, and the error was not harmless, requiring suppression. Unfair trial. The trial court denied Allen his constitutional right to a fair trial through a series of arbitrary and prejudicial rulings that crippled his ability to present a complete defense. The trial court excluded critical exculpatory evidence, including Blair's sketch, which directly undermined the state's eyewitness theory and timeline, and barred expert testimony challenging the reliability of the state's forensic methodology. It permitted inadmissible hearsay to rehabilitate the prosecution's timeline, and it blocked Allen from presenting evidence that showed the circumstances that led to his confessions and impeached their credibility, including audio depicting his deteriorated mental state. The court further prevented Allen from introducing substantial evidence of third-party guilt, an incomplete investigation, depriving the jury of context necessary to assess reasonable doubt. Collectively, these errors violated Allen's 14th and 6th Amendment rights and created a fundamentally one-sided proceeding. A new trial is constitutionally required to restore the integrity of the adversarial process. The argument. The trial court committed reversible error by admitting evidence seized from the unconstitutional search of Allen's home and denying a Franks hearing. When reviewing the admission of evidence after denial of a motion to suppress, the court considers evidence favorable to the ruling and uncontradicted evidence to the contrary. Factual findings are reviewed for clear error, but the constitutionality of a search is reviewed de novo. Allen filed a motion to suppress, a motion for Franks hearing, amended request, and a lengthy memorandum with exhibits. The trial court denied the motion and hearing, concluding Liggett's affidavit did not include false statements or omit facts with reckless disregard or intent to mislead. The trial court erred by concluding Detective Liggett did not make false statements or reckless omissions in his affidavit. Both the state and the U.S. Constitution guarantee that no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation. The state must include all material facts in a warrant application, including facts that cast doubt on the existence of probable cause and a source's reliability. A warrant is invalid. Number one, if the police omitted facts with the intent to make the affidavit misleading or with reckless disregard for whether it would be misleading. Two, the affidavit supplemented with the omitted information would have been insufficient to support a finding of probable cause. The defendant must prove a reckless or deliberate false statement by a preponderance. This is in Franks versus Delaware. That supports that argument. An officer omits evidence with reckless disregard if the officer withholds a fact in his ken that any reasonable person would have known that the judge would wish to know. Examples.
No, it was just an accident, Amy. Liggett just forgot an accident. It just escaped his mind.
Mm-hmm. Examples include facts undermining the type of drug seized or an informant's reliability. This includes details undermining an officer's conclusion. Marijuana field officer described as near defendant's house was 2 to 6 miles away. I guess they're giving that as an example. Detective misled court by incorrectly reporting witness's description of suspect, equating description with the defendant. Detective Liggett omitted and changed key information that undermined his conclusion Allen was bridge guy. Liggett misled the court in 4 ways. First, Liggett misled the court to believe Blair's description of the man on the bridge matched Allen when it did not. Liggett told the court that Blair said the man was standing on the platform and wearing a blue jacket and jeans. But Liggett omitted the rest of Blair's description that did not match Allen. The man had brown poofy hair like the sketch below, was in his 20s or early 30s, youthful and medium build. Second, Liggett misled the court that Allen's car was parked at the old CPS lot during the time of the kidnappings. Detective Liggett told the court that after Blair saw the man on the bridge, she saw 2 girls she thought were Abby and Libby on the trail approaching the bridge. As Blair was leaving the trail, she saw a car oddly parked at the old CPS lot around 2:10. Another witness, Wilson, also saw a car backed into the CPS lot as if concealing the license plate. Both witnesses drew diagrams of the car parked in the same general area and manner. Liggett told the court that Allen parked his black 2016 Ford Focus at the old CPS building, but omitted that Blair saw the car she saw during the time frame of the kidnapping was not black and had sharp angles like the sketch below. Considering the omitted information, Blair excluded Allen's black hatchback. This is material omission. Invalid warrant where officer changed witness's car description in drive-by shooting. Third, Liggett misled the court that the man walking on 300 North was bridge guy. Liggett falsely told the court that Carbaugh in 2017 claimed the man was muddy and bloody wearing a blue jacket when she actually said his jacket was tan and he was muddy. A bloody man in a blue jacket matches bridge guy. A muddy in a tan jacket does not. Liggett also admitted that Blair told him the man she saw on the bridge was not the same person Carbaugh described. ISP even released a public statement, the men are not the same person. Fourth, Liggett connected Allen to bridge guy by falsely claiming Allen admitted wearing a black or blue Carhartt and a head covering. The man the 4 girls saw wore the same clothes as the man on LG's phone. The clothes Allen admitted he wore matched the clothes by the individual on the bridge in the photo taken from the video from LG's phone. But Allen told investigators he did not know what he was wearing. Although Liggett used Allen's wife's statement that Allen currently owned a blue Carhartt as a nexus to his home, Liggett omitted that she said he purchased his coat a couple of years ago. The girls were killed in 2017. Had the court known Allen simply admitted owning a blue or black coat, as does probably every 50-year-old man, it would have known there is no connection between him and Bridge Guy. I'm not convinced how strong that argument is right there, but Detective Liggett's omissions and false statements recklessly misled the judge. Any reasonable person would have known the judge would wish to know that Blair's description of Bridge Guy and the car at the CPS did not match Allen or his car. Number 2, in 2017, Carball described the man walking down the road as
Take a shot.
Only muddy, wearing a tan jacket, not a blue jacket like Bridge Guy. Number 3, Blair did not believe she saw the same man Carball saw. Number 4, Allen never said he wore a blue Carhartt or head covering like Bridge Guy, and he bought his blue Carhartt a couple years before 2022. The omitted and false information strikes at the heart of Liggett's conclusion that Allen was the man on LG's phone. The state's probable cause relies on a tight timeline, making Allen the man the 4 girls saw on the trail. Blair saw on the bridge and Carball saw on the road. Any judge would want to know if witnesses described someone other than Allen, his car, or Bridge Guy. Moreover, the fact Liggett lied twice in the affidavit about the connection between Allen and Bridge Guy, i.e. the blue jacket, shows more than reckless disregard for the truth. These falsehoods were directed at connecting Allen to LG's video, which would otherwise include any white male. Number 3, with the omitted and acute evidence, the affidavit was insufficient to establish probable cause. Probable cause exists when there is sufficient evidence to cause a reasonably prudent person to believe a search will uncover evidence of a crime. A reasonably prudent person would not believe Allen was connected to the murders or that evidence would be found at his home. The state is left with Doolin's report claiming Allen told him he was on the trails between 1:30 and 3:30 p.m. and saw 3 girls, not 4 girls, like those who thought they saw a Bridge Guy. During his October 13th, 2022 interview, Allen admitted wearing blue jeans and owning gun, knives, and a blue or black jacket, and walked out to the first platform of the bridge to watch Bridge.
Every other male in Carroll County is guilty of that, guys.
Mm-hmm. But Allen does not look anything like the person Blair saw on the bridge. Also, his car is a different color and shape than the oddly parked car. And the man Carball saw walking was most likely not even Bridge Guy. If Allen being on the trail within the same 2 hours the girls were abducted is enough for a warrant, law enforcement would have obtained one for Allen's home in 2017. In 2022, ISP had no more evidence connecting Allen to the murders than they had days after the murders when Allen, like others, responded to the request for help. It was not enough then, and it was not enough in 2022. The error requires reversal. A court must suppress fruits of an illegal search. The state's entire case is built on Liggett's half-truths and falsehoods. Without the gun seized in the search, there is no opinion from Oberg upon which the state arrested Allen. And without the arrest, there is no confessions. If the warrant was illegal, the state has no case. Even if this court finds the confession was not a product of solitary, Allen is entitled to a new trial. Before a constitutional error can be held harmless, the court must find it was harmless beyond a reasonable doubt. Without the fruits of the search, the gun, the casing in a hope box, the Carhartt knives, and computer, the state cannot prove the jury would have convicted. At minimum, Allen is entitled to remand for a Franks hearing. Even if Allen's exhibits to the Franks motion did not prove by a preponderance that Liggett deliberately or recklessly falsified or omitted material information, they entitled him to a hearing. A defendant who makes a substantial preliminary showing that an affidavit included a false statement or reckless omission necessary to probable cause is unconstitutionally entitled to challenge the warrant at a hearing. To meet this showing, the defendant need not present conclusive proof, but must support their accusations with evidence and citations to the warrant application. Here, the court's denial of a hearing was legally erroneous because Allen made a substantial showing. Allen supported his claims with depositions, police interviews, and reports. Citing Liggett's application, Allen made specific arguments. In a final motion, Allen reiterated these points, urging the court to compare the affidavit with Blair and Carbaugh's interviews. Telling the trial court was willing to schedule the Franks hearing when Allen was represented by Fort Wayne attorneys, but refused when the original attorneys were reinstated. Allen's constitutional protections are not contingent on who his attorneys are. Number two, the trial court erred by admitting statements Allen made while gravely disabled during his unprecedented pretrial solitary confinement in a maximum security prison. I found solitary confinement the most forbidding aspect of prison life. There is no end and no beginning. There is only one's mind, which can begin to play tricks. Was that a dream, or did it really happen? Or begins to question everything. One begins to question everything. Quote was by Nelson Mandela. Solitary confinement is a form of punishment, and depending on its conditions, even torture. By 2023, when Allen was held in solitary confinement for 13 months, it was well established that prolonged isolation causes psychological pain, suicidal ideation, and psychosis. To protect inmates from psychological harm, the IDOC strictly prohibits solitary confinement over 30 days for anyone with serious mental illness and requires transfer if SMI symptoms appear. When Allen exhibited the predictable symptoms of psychological pain, confusion, and psychosis, the IDOC administrators refused to transfer him to a mental health unit. When Allen's attorneys informed the court of his dire condition, the court also refused to move him, and the prosecutor delayed and mocked counsel's concerns while collecting evidence of Allen's confessions. The question for this court is unprecedented but simple. Should the state be able to benefit from Allen's psychological pain that their deliberate indifference to his mental health caused? Human decency provides the answer, no. A standard of review and additional facts. An appellate court reviews a suppression denial for substantial evidence of probative value that supports the trial court's decision. It considers uncontradicted evidence favorable to the defendant and reviews legal issues de novo. The voluntariness of a confession is a legal issue. Allen moved to suppress his statements made while in solitary confinement, which the court denied. The court reasoned the statements were voluntary because Allen failed to show they resulted from state psychological coercion or cohesive interrogation. The court found Allen's detention was intended to protect him, and that while he suffered from major depressive disorder and anxiety, he did not have SMI that would render his statements involuntary. In addition to the IDOC records and video like those admitted at trial, Allen proffered an order and settlement from the Indiana Protection and Advocacy that the trial court excluded from the suppression hearing as irrelevant. In 2011, the Southern District of Indiana held that IDOC's housing of SMI inmates in solitary constituted cruel and unusual punishment, violating the Eighth Amendment. The Southern District Court found SMI includes delusional disorder, psychotic disorder, and MDD. Segregation is harmful to prisoners with SMI due to the lack of social interaction, significant sensory deprivation, and forced idleness, leading to decompensation and psychological pain. An inmate decompensating from solitary may experience hallucinations, sleep disturbance, memory problems, anxiety, paranoia, depression, eating problems, or engaging in self-injury or suicide. Suicide watch further exacerbates the illness. The severe conditions in the segregation units cause a predictable deterioration of SMI prisoners' mental health, and the IDOC has explicitly observed, diagnosed, and noted patient decompensation. The IDOC knew these effects occurred even in a non-SMI offender. Before a hearing on relief, the parties reached a settlement, including an expanded definition of SMI that subsumed the court's definition. The IDOC's policies refer to the settlement, which sets the tone. An inmate with SMI can only be held in solitary for 30 days. If an inmate decompensates into SMI and is unlikely to return to general population within 30 days, transfer is required. Allen admitted to Dr. Westcott's 127-page report in August 21st of 2023 that Westcott evaluated Allen, who had been in the Westville Correctional Unit over 9 months. He was terrified, unsure what was real, and wondering if he was dead, in hell, or waiting for heaven. He could not recall weeks of early 2023, including playing with feces, confessing, or banging his head. He believed he had been drugged. Westcott cited the IDOC's records showing acute periods of confusion, paranoia, delusional thinking, cognitive slowing, aggression, and combativeness. During this period of loss of touch with reality, Allen confessed. Westcott concluded Allen's psychosis stemmed from MDD, his personality and well-known effects of solitary confinement. Allen was grossly disorganized, delusional, and paranoid. Objective testing ruled out malingering. The trial court abused its discretion by refusing to admit the IPAS order settlement into the suppression hearing. Evidence is relevant if it has any tendency to make a fact of consequence in determining the action, more or less probable than it would be without it. Here, the order settlement makes it more likely Allen's psychosis was caused by his confinement. The order found solitary confinement causes all of the symptoms Allen experienced. Allen was more likely decompensated because he spent several months on suicide watch or an even more restrictive form of solitary. The order settlement also makes it more likely Allen was subjected to psychological coercion by showing solitary causes psychological pain. It demonstrates state action. The IDOC placing and keeping Allen in solitary, knowing it was causing his predictable pain. The order settlement shows how extensively IDOC violated its own policy, as it includes MDD in the SMI definition, restricting Allen solitary to 30 days. Allen was harmed by the court's refusal to consider the order settlement because it undermined the court's findings and conclusions. C. The state failed to prove Allen's statements made while gravely disabled were voluntary. Number one, the U.S. Constitution. The state failed to prove that Allen's statements were not product of psychological coercion. An involuntary statement obtained through state action violates due process and is inadmissible. A confession is voluntary if it is a product of rational intellect and freely self-determined rather than overborne will by the state law enforcement's conduct. State law enforcement can include psychiatric facilities and prison staff. Statements produced through a coercive environment are involuntary, regardless of whether solicited through police interrogation. Let me see here.
While you take a break, I want to ask you a question real quick.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that Dr. Walla was so involved in his care, and she was an agent of the state, right? Because she worked there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm wondering, and they may get to it, but I'm wondering if that's what they're sort of referring to as being the state.
That or it's collective. It's, the judge keeping him there. The safekeeping order itself was granted by a state judge.
Well, this says the involuntary statement obtained through state action. And that's what I'm wondering. These statements, the statements made even to the people that stood outside the door could be argued they're state action, not the prisoners, although that's questionable, but the guards and stuff that were placed there for that. Isn't that sort of a state action of a coerced confession?
I mean, I would lean towards that. That would be a good question for Michael, because he's, being an Indiana lawyer, what they consider that. But and I would even, going a little bit further, I would even assume that the suicide companions could be considered state actors, because they're not, I don't know if they're getting paid for that service, but they are assigned and they are working on behalf of the prison to monitor him.
Well,
so
if they're getting any form of compensation, it doesn't even have to be money. If they're getting special privileges or special time or something put in their commissary or any of that, it could be argued, I think, that it would be state action.
Right. So
anyway, it crossed in my mind when you were reading through this, and I was just thinking. I mean, I'm far more impressed by this brief than I had hoped I would be. I mean, this has covered everything we've all talked about for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry about that.
The months spent in solitary confinement, deprived of light, adequate food, and contact with the outside world is by itself sufficient to sustain a finding of involuntariness. The staff at the state psychiatric facility created a coercive environment, rendering a juvenile's confessions involuntary. The crucial element is police overreaching. When state actors use more subtle forms of psychological coercion, the defendant's mental illness is more significant in the voluntariness determination. But the state must still exploit the defendant's illness with coercive tactics. This is generally done through aggressive interrogation, but exploitation can occur in other ways. It is difficult to imagine a situation in which a confession would be less the product of a free intellect, less voluntary, than when brought about by a drug having the effect of a truth serum. For a statement to be involuntary, state action must be causally related to the confession. The state's prolonged solitary confinement of Allen was state action. Contrary to the court's finding that Allen failed to prove the state psychological coercion, it was the state's burden to prove Allen's statement voluntary by a preponderance of evidence. Overruled on other grounds, they recite another case. To the extent Allen had a minimal burden of production, he met that. Prolonged maximum security solitary confinement of a pre-trial detainee, especially after psychosis develops, is state action. Unlike the mentally ill defendant in Connolly, who walked into a police station and confessed, Allen never voluntarily voluntarily came into custody. He consistently protested innocence until enduring 5 months of maximum security solitary with no human contact except while chained or caged. Because it was pre-trial, Allen's solitary was unprecedented and borderline, if not unconstitutional, punishment. Other IDOC safekeepers were in mental health units, not solitary. On a continuum of possible punishments in the justice system, solitary confinement is a maximum security facility, is the most extreme. Also, Allen's solitary exceeded the 30-day IDOC policy restriction. IDOC knew it could harm Allen. When IDOC observed Allen's predictable deterioration, they refused to transfer him. Keeping Allen in solitary when he was no doubt SMI was an administrative, not clinical decision. Finally, the state's conduct also involved the prosecutor, law enforcement, and the court. After Allen filed his April 5th emergency transfer motion citing his dire condition, the prosecutor waited 9 days to respond while investigators monitored real-time calls in which Allen confessed. Bastard. During this delay, Allen continued deteriorating. The prosecutor then mocked the defense concern as colorful and dramatic, while that same day, IDOC found Allen gravely disabled. Knowing Allen was decompensating, the court refused to transfer him, putting the onus on the IDOC to provide care. It is fundamentally wrong to keep a gravely disabled Allen in solitary while using against him statements made to psychologists and suicide companions. 1 week later, the prosecutor sought all medical records, videos, and communications while confessions were ongoing. Monitoring and collecting his statements consumed hundreds of hours and produced over 60 confessions. ISP interviewed inmates and guards and even sent a psychologist to speak with Dr. Walla. Allen showed more than sufficient state action. The state's prolonged pretrial solitary confinement was psychological coercion. Allen's solitary was psychological coercion because it was prolonged, caused psychological pain, and put him at the mercy of the state. The prolonged nature and coercion because solitary confinement can bring a person to the edge of madness, perhaps to madness itself. This has been recognized in literature, law, and science. And Gracian, Psychiatric Effects of Solitary Confinement. Solitary causes psychological trauma, including psychosis, hallucinations, and paranoia. From day one at Westville, Allen was placed in a strip cell, the most restrictive cell in the most restrictive solitary unit, with only bare essentials and a camera constantly recording him. Soon thereafter, IDOC ordered guards to videotape him when out of the cell, included showering and attorney visits. Suicide companions remained outside his door documenting everything, regardless of suicide watch status. He had no contact with anyone unless caged or chained. The sensory deprivation, social isolation, and forced idleness is difficult even for healthy people. A healthy man wrongfully implicated and detained in solitary questioned his memory, suspected he committed the crime, though he stayed sane by reading, exercising, praying. The experience traumatized him. Early videos show Allen pacing his 8x5 by 12.5 cell, laying down, doing leg crunches, writing, reading, and looking distressed. Cell videos from December to March. Within 2 weeks, Allen said he was broken and told his wife, "If this becomes too much for you, I will call the detectives and tell them whatever they want to know." Had Alan's solitary been 30 or even 90 days, he would not have decompensated, but it was 13 months. The prolonged solitary caused Alan predictable psychological pain, paranoia, nightmares, memory problems, and confusion. It is undisputed Alan deteriorated to being gravely disabled and very psychotic, and the IDOC involuntary administered antipsychotics between April and late June. Although Walla noted concerns about feigning, she diagnosed psychosis and suspected incompetence and overmedication. Ann Westville only monitored Alan's mental health. Talking with a psychologist while shackled in a cage is not treatment. Solitary put Alan in a constant state of vulnerability. Solitary confinement has long been recognized as a psychological coercion equated to the rack, the thumbscrew, protracted questioning. Pre-trial solitary is punishment already underway and conveys, without the necessary of spoken words, the implied threat of further punishment. It does not matter why a defendant was in solitary, whether justified or whether the prison planned further punishment. In this harsh environment, Dr. Walla controlled all aspects of Alan's life, including whether he got bedding, clothes, meal items, books, personal items, and utensils. She could provide a new window and a tablet or strip him to the bare necessities. Privileges were contingent on pleasing her. Whether Walla had ill intent is irrelevant. It is what Alan thought and what solitary confinement did to him or would do to many of us. After confessing to Walla on May 3rd, he asked for his property back and she indicated she needed more consistency. Senator McCain, a prison camp survivor, explained solitary crushes your spirit and weakens your resistance more effectively than any other form of mistreatment. Alan entered solitary confinement, compromised. He left broken. C. Alan's confessions were a product of solitary-induced psychosis, not rational intellect. The IDOC records show that Alan continued to suffer from psychotic during the times he confessed. On April 5th, when he confessed to Dr. Walla, he was not eating or sleeping and was drinking from the toilet. On May 3rd, when he confessed, Alan had symptoms of paranoia and disorientation. Despite Walla claiming he presented as more organized than he has been, the day before he was confusing nightmares with reality and claiming to have started World War III. He was too disjointed to hold a conversation. Days earlier, he covered himself in feces and claimed he was King Michael. His confessions to guards occurred during bizarre and psychotic behavior. Guards believed he was faking, but they are not clinicians. So why am I having trouble with hard words today? And Dr. Westcott found no malingering through objective testing. Alan confessed to his family on April 3rd, May 10th, May 17th, and May 25th, and on June 11th. On April 3rd, he also fell on the floor, asked if he was dead, and was suicidal. On May 10th, he believed he was dead, that the world would blow up if he slept, his water was poisoned, and he was reliving the same day. On May 17th, he was paranoid of attorneys and staff with Odin patches. On May 25th, Alan paced for 2 hours and banged his head. On June 11th, he thought he was in hell and did not understand what was happening. In August, Alan did not remember confessing or weeks of early April. Throughout, he complained of memory loss. State action overbore Alan's will. Alan did not confess until after 5 to 7 months of solitary. Before arrest, he consistently denied involvement. Dr. Westcott opined Allen's psychosis was caused by the stress of solitary confinement on pre-existing illness. Dr. Walla agreed that a lot of the time, solitary confinement exacerbates mental illness, and it is reasonable to believe Allen's confinement caused his psychosis. The social isolation of solitary makes people question their self. If you are treated like you are guilty, you begin to think you are. Dr. Grassin testified, a false memory starts with a belief. In his first confession to his wife, Allen said, "I think I did it." In his first confession to Dr. Walla, he was unsure if he had sex with the girls. Allen got facts wrong and confessed to crimes he did not commit. Number 2, Indiana Constitution. The state failed to prove Allen's statements were a product of rational intellect rather than the state's misconduct. The Indiana Constitution also protects against the admission of involuntary statements. Indiana's test is like the due process standard, requiring a confession be freely self-determined by a rational intellect and free will. However, it is more robust because it requires the state to prove voluntariness beyond a reasonable doubt. Also, it does not require state action be coercive to overcome a mentally ill person's will. Mentally ill defendant's statement involuntary due to his altered state and confusion. Although officers neither coerced him nor knew of his illness, but mental illness alone will not render a statement involuntary. There must be some state negligence that contributed to overcoming the defendant's rational intellect. Police gave confusing or inadequate warnings. Here, the IDOC's refusal to apply their 30-day policy to Allen and to transfer him after he deteriorated is, at minimum, neglect state conduct that caused Allen's psychosis and confessions. And the prosecutor's delay and the trial court's refusal to set a timely hearing exacerbated deterioration. This is conduct that our Constitution cannot tolerate, regardless of whether it constitutes coercion under federal due process. Also, the evidence does not show the statements were a product of rational intellect beyond a reasonable doubt. Allen was considered gravely disabled through June 16th, when he received his last emergency injection due to self-harm. Though Walla sometimes described Allen as more coherent or his symptoms not significant, the state cannot have it both ways. Allen decompensated to the point of forced medication, but remained rational beyond a reasonable doubt. Even if Allen could occasionally hold a conversation, it does not render his confession voluntary. Even if the court finds Allen's statements voluntary, they are a product of unconstitutional detention. Allen's prolonged solitary confinement violated Article 1. Courts are continuously bound by the basic concepts of fairness that are frequently identified with due process in the federal Constitution. Guarantee for every person, for every injury done to him in his person, remedy by due course of law. Here, Allen was sent to solitary for safekeeping without even a hearing or notice. Even when his attorneys informed the court of his dire condition, the court refused to set a hearing in violation. And they cite the article. Although the court eventually held a hearing on June 15th, by that time, the damage was done. Fairness protections in criminal cases are found in different Indiana constitutional provisions. Just as pretrial punishment violates federal due process, it violates the Indiana Constitution. Indiana is one of just 6 states protecting citizens from unnecessary rigor. The framers wrote, "No persons arrested or confined in jail shall be treated with unnecessary rigor. Typically, this provision requires a prisoner suffers severe mistreatment. Recognizing this provision applies to solitary confinement, the Indiana Supreme Court stated, the very essence of punishment and the sole use of the prison walls is the confinement of the convict within them. Humanity indeed forbids, as unnecessary rigor, that his confinement should be absolutely solitary, or that all his natural and civil rights should be temporarily annihilated. Here, Allen's treatment rose to the level of unnecessary rigor. Rigor is the act or instance of strictness, severity, or cruelty. When Allen started suffering from confusion, memory lapse, paranoia, and bizarre behaviors, there was no longer a risk he could not handle the harsh conditions of maximum security solitary. It was a reality. The strictness, severity, and cruelty of his confinement is evident on video, where he is screaming in fear, confused about where he is, unable to respond, and drooling and self-harming. The rigor was physical too. Solitary can result in physical harm, including self-mutilation as a maladaptive coping behavior. Allen lost 40 pounds, was unable to care for himself, was tased. His face was black and blue and at times bleeding. He was poisoned by fecal matter and toilet water. Indifference to his catatonia is shown where medical staff discuss blood pressure and cholesterol with a vacant Allen. This psychological and physical pain was unnecessary. The IDOC could have transferred him upon deterioration as policy requires. Even an isolated infirmary cell would have been better than the whole designed for punishment. Likewise, the court could have moved him when the court learned of his dire condition. Over 150 years ago, Dostoevsky wrote, "The degree of civilization in a society can be judged by entering its prisons." Writing about the effects of solitary, Justice Kennedy hearkened to this quote, noting, "There is truth to this in our own time." Applying the exclusionary rule to these constitutional violations would deter abuses within our prison system and law enforcement, protect judicial system integrity by showing it condemns such conduct, and protect the human dignity of those unable to make bond while awaiting trial. Excluding confession that was a result of physical abuse and solitary. Indiana has a robust exclusionary rule. Relying on article such and such, Indiana adopted the exclusionary rule long before the Fourth Amendment exclusionary rule adopted the states. Under the exclusionary rule, to determine whether a statement is a product of illegal detention, the court must ask if the statement has been come at by exploitation of that illegality, or instead by means sufficiently distinguishable to be purged of the primary taint. The court considers the time elapsed between the illegality and the acquisition of the evidence, the presence of intervening circumstances, and 3, the purpose of flagrancy of the official misconduct. First, Allen's statements occurred during the legality of his detention at Westville. Second, there was no intervening circumstances. Again, there is a well-known connection between solitary confinement and psychosis/delirium. Third, the constitutional violation was flagrant because the IDOC violated its own policies for keeping Allen safe, and the court and prosecutor refused to help when Allen's attorneys warned of his deterioration. Even if this court finds Allen's statements were voluntary because He was not interrogated by law enforcement. He was still gravely disabled when he confessed. As such, his free will did not purge the taint of his illegal detention. The trial court erred by denying the motion to suppress. The error was not harmless. Before a federal or state constitutional error can be held harmless, the court must find it was harmless beyond a reasonable doubt. No piece of evidence may have greater sway over a jury than a defendant's confession. The erroneous admission of statements to Dr. Walla alone was prejudicial because they were a large part of the state's case. The prosecutor particularly concentrated on Allen's May 3rd statement, arguing that Allen knew a fact only the killer would know. The confessions also countered Allen's confident and unwavering pre-solitary protests of innocence. 3. The court denied Allen his right to present a complete defense, to explain the scene and impeach the investigation. The 14th Amendment guarantees a defendant the right to a fair trial. The amendment's due process clause places significant, substantive limits on state power, prohibiting its arbitrary exertion and guaranteeing criminal defendants a fair opportunity to defend against the state's accusations. For an opportunity to be fair, a defendant must be permitted to confront and cross-examine witnesses and to call witnesses in his or her own behalf. These overreaching principles operate in tandem with the Sixth Amendment, which similarly guarantees criminal defendants meaningful opportunity to present a complete defense. Although the trial courts have broad discretion in conducting trials, this discretion has constitutional limits. That is, courts may not infringe upon a weighty interest of the accused through decisions that are arbitrary or disappropriate to the purpose they are designed to serve, or disproportionate to the purposes they are designed to serve. As explained more fully below, the trial court made several reversible errors under the rules of evidence in Indiana's trial rules. In many instances, these decisions violated the Constitution as well. Standard of review. While this court assesses claims relating to admitting or excluding evidence for abuse of discretion, to the extent those claims implicate constitutional issues, this court's review them de novo. Errors in the admission of evidence will be disregarded as harmless if its probable impact on the jury in light of the evidence in the case is sufficiently minor so as not to affect the substantial rights of the parties. But when the error is constitutional, the standard is higher. Generally, before a federal constitutional error can be held harmless, the court must be able to declare a belief that it was harmless beyond a reasonable doubt. The court omitted reversible error by excluding Blair's sketch of the bridge guy. At trial, the court prohibited Allen from using Blair's sketch of bridge guy. This decision violated our rules of evidence and denied Allen his constitutional right to present a defense of mistaken identity. Evidence is relevant when it has any tendency to make the existence of any fact that is of consequence to the determination of the action more probable or less probable than it would be without the evidence. A court may exclude relevant evidence if its probative value is substantially outweighed by a danger of unfair prejudice, confusing the issues, misleading the jury, undue delay, or needlessly presenting cumulative evidence. Blair's sketch proves she did not see Allen on the bridge. Blair did not identify Allen in court as bridge guy. But according to the prosecutor, Blair must have seen Allen on the bridge because Allen told us he went onto the Monon High Bridge out to the first platform, which is exactly where Blair saw bridge guy.
Hey, you want me to take it for a bit?
Sure, go ahead.
I mean, are you still good? I didn't want to be rude about it, but I didn't want you to wear your voice completely out.
I'm good.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll
Holler
come
at
back
me.
from feeding the goats in case anyone has
Okay.
questions.
In case we missed you. Blair's sketch shows Alan looked nothing like the person Blair
If they have
saw.
questions.
Do what?
Yeah, no, I just in case anyone had questions. Apparently
Oh no,
Baldwin's
we're gonna
interviewing
do we're
somewhere
gonna do we're gonna do another
right now,
live.
so
We're gonna do another live. I'm going to try to pull out a lot of the questions that are in the chat here, and I'm going to do another live, and we're going to address all the questions. We're just going to finish this reading.
yeah. Yeah. I'm just letting you know. Some people have petered off because Baldwin's on live right now.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fine.
Yeah, just letting you know.
Blair,
Yeah, no.
Blair's sketch shows Alan looked nothing like the person Blair saw. Just 3 days after the murders, Blair met with a sketch artist and described the man she saw on the bridge as white, about 20, of medium build and having brown curly hair. An artist created the following sketch based on Blair's description. This looks nothing like Alan. At the time of the murders, Alan was short, 44 years old, with closely cropped hair. Blair's sketch also shows that she and Carball saw different people. The state's timeline for the murders is dependent upon Carball and Blair seeing the same person, and the prosecutor told the jury that every eyewitness is adamant the person they saw was Bridge Guy. There's no doubt in their minds, but Blair's sketch disproves this claim. Carball, like Blair, made a sketch. When Blair saw it, she described it as wrong and not who she saw. Blair's sketch impeaches the investigation and shows law enforcement biased against Alan. For 2 years, law enforcement circulated Carball's sketch without it yielding a single arrest. So in April of 2019, ISP released Blair's sketch, declared it represented the face of Bridge Guy, and announced that Blair and Carball did not see the same person. After Alan's arrest, the story changed, and the jury was told Carball and Blair saw the same person. Blair's sketch was reliable and probative of Bridge Guy's identity. Blair contacted law enforcement the day the girls went missing, and it was very clear to her she saw Bridge Guy. 2 days later, she developed her sketch with an artist and a book of facial features. She rated her sketch a 10 out of 10. She met with law enforcement repeatedly, and she reaffirmed her confidence in her sketch. She insisted that she could identify Bridge Guy if she saw him. Blair's sketch is not hearsay. Indiana bars the use of out-of-court statements for the truth of the matter asserted unless the statement falls within an exception. Blair's sketch was not a statement. Although Indiana has not reached the issue, other courts hold that a sketch is the functional equivalent of a photograph. No statement is involved. The sketch is not hearsay. A statement is not hearsay if the declarant testifies and is subject to cross-examination about a prior statement, and the statement is an identification of a person shortly after perceiving the person. The rule applies regardless of whether the identifying witness makes a positive in-court identification or not. Here, Blair identified Bridge Guy to law enforcement immediately and developed her sketch 3 days later. Blair's sketch is also admissible as an adoptive admission. A statement is not hearsay when it is offered against an opposing party and is one the party manifested that is adopted or believed to be true. That occurred here. In April of 2019, the ISP released Blair's sketch to the public and declared, "This is the face of Bridge Guy." Blair's sketch is admissible under Indiana's common law, too. Decades before Indiana adopted the rules of evidence, sketches were admissible if the eyewitness took the stand at trial. Even if the sketch was inadmissible hearsay, Alan was still entitled to use it. State law does not have the last word on hearsay. and the rule must yield to the constitutional right to present a defense. Hearsay is admissible when other law requires it. When identity is crucial, the case, a defendant is entitled to defend on a claim of mistaken identity. And this right cannot be abridged through the application of arbitrary or disproportionate rules or the mechanism application of otherwise rational rules. Excluding the sketch violated the Constitution. Here, the state concedes that Bridge Guy's identity was crucial to the case. We can determine who Bridge Guy is. We can determine who killed Abby and Libby. Blair's sketch was critical to Alan's defense of mistaken identity, and the judge's decision to exclude it was arbitrary and disproportionate to any legitimate government interest. The error was harmful under both the constitutional harmless error standard and Indiana's evidentiary standard. There is no dispute the state's timeline depended upon Blair seeing Alan on the bridge and 2, Blair and Carball seeing the same person. Blair's sketch disproved both points. Excluding it affected Alan's substantial rights and the jury's verdict. C, the court committed reversible error in excluding Tobin's testimony. Alan tendered Williams Tobin to explain the scientific community's robust criticism of the AFTE's toolmark matching methodology. The judge excluded him because he was not a firearms expert. He was untrained in firearms identification. He did not examine the evidence in this case, and he did not conduct a firearms examination. According to the court, Tobin's testimony does not go to an issue before the jury and lacks relevance. This decision violated our rules of evidence and violated Alan's constitutional right to present a defense. Expert testimony should be admitted if 1, the expert is qualified by knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education, and 2, the testimony will help the trier of fact to understand the evidence or to determine a fact in issue. Indiana adopted this rule to liberalize the admissions of expert opinion. Tobin was clearly qualified to explain the scientific community's robust criticism of the AFTE methodology. Tobin is a nationally recognized expert in forensic metallurgy and material science who has testified as an expert in many cases.
Metallurgy.
He has extensive experience in metallurgy, bullet and
metallurgy.
Metallurgy. Bullet
Metal?
and lead.
Metallurgy.
Metallurgy. Bullet.
You got it.
I got it. And lead analysis and toolmark principles, along with a background in statistics. He understands the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology, which has issued a detailed report criticizing the AFTE methodology. Tobin's testimony was
Melissa said it was perfect.
She's never wrong.
Exactly. Melissa said it was correct, and she's never ever been wrong in her life. So, guys.
Tobin's testimony was essential for assessing Oberg's credibility and determining what to believe. Once an expert takes the stand, their credibility is fair game for impeachment, and a party is free to challenge the expert's methodology with opposing testimony from another qualified expert. Abso-freaking-lutely. The jury is ultimately responsible for assessing witness credibility and determining what to believe. Here, Oberg testified that she matched tool marks on test firings from Alan's gun with tool marks on the unspent cartridge found at the murder scene. Oberg told the jury she found agreement between the tool marks.
Wait, can you go back a sentence? Because I think you just petered out for a second there. I think you disconnected.
Oh. Oberg testified that she matched tool marks on test firings from Alan's gun with tool marks on unspent cartridge on the unspent cartridge found at the murder. Oberg told the jury she found agreement between the tool marks by using the AFTE methodology. She gave an error rate of 2.2% for false positives and 2.87 for false negatives. She discussed studies and articles that she reviewed to apply the methodology. And over relevancy objections, she described studies relating to guns that were not even Sig Sauer models. A lay juror might find this testimony impressive or coherent, but AFTE's methodology is anything but straightforward. Tobin's experience would help a jury understand the scientific community's criticism of the AFTE's subjective methodology and force Oberg to engage with that critique. Even if our rules tolerated Tobin's exclusion, the decision was patently unconstitutional. A defendant is entitled to a meaningful opportunity to present a complete defense. That entitles him to impeach witnesses who provides a crucial link in the proof of the defendant's guilt. Although trial courts possess broad discretion to limit impeachment, the discretion cannot be used to arbitrarily exclude competent, reliable evidence bearing on witness credibility when such evidence is central to the defendant's claim of innocence. Here, Oberg's credibility was central to the case, and the judge arbitrarily excluded Tobin. Tobin is an expert in the AFTE methodology and its shortcomings. He is experienced with firearms identification, and he examined Oberg's materials. There was no legitimate state interest in excluding Tobin. Allen did not waive his right to appeal the Tobin issue by calling Warren. A party aggrieved by an erroneous evidentiary ruling is entitled to respond to the improper ruling without sacrificing the right to appellate recourse. Once the court excluded Tobin, Allen responded by calling Warren, who endorsed the use of the AFTE methodology and engaged Oberg in a battle of experts over how to properly apply the methodology to the evidence. This decision did not waive Allen's right to appeal Tobin's exclusion. The error was harmful under both the constitutional standard and the evidentiary standard. The state told the jury Oberg never has been wrong and that Allen has no explanation of how his bullet from his gun ended up between the bodies of Abby and Libby, 6 inches from Libby's foot. Had the jury heard,
wasn't it underneath her?
Doesn't know why, because he didn't do it.
the bullet was next to Libby's foot, which is why it wasn't underneath of her.
Yeah, right, but it's saying he doesn't have an explanation of how his bullet from his gun ended up there, possibly because he wasn't there and that wasn't his bullet. But
well, we don't. I mean, how did that bullet even get there if he racked his gun right before he told the girls to go down the hill?
Teleportation.
He would have been up there at the top of the hill. Yeah.
Up there at the top of the hill. And I really can't believe that's not, I mean, I guess it's a weaker argument, but if, they allow law enforcement to tell the jury what was said on the video, but they didn't explain how that racked unspent round was racked and kicked out of the gun at the south end of the bridge, and then how it got clear on the other side of the creek.
Well, I think that's a little bit more towards merit, and they were limited on what they could do here.
Right.
Well, that was also my issue with not letting the jury see the crime scene, because now they're going to, maybe the jury assumes, oh, maybe it rolled off the bridge and down a hill and to the crime scene. Maybe they think that's possible, where it's like, you have to be there. You have to have really seen this thing, and you can't just have seen it a few videos once or twice to actually understand the landscape.
That would be one hell of a magic bullet for it to do that.
That's why it was dubbed the magic bullet. Had the jury heard Tobin's robust impeachment of Oberg's methodology, the outcome of this case would probably be different. D, the court committed reversible error in admitting hearsay to rehabilitate the timeline upon which the state built its entire case. The state built its entire case upon the following timeline. Allen encountered the girls at 2:13. He completed the murders alone. left LG's phone at the murder scene, was spotted by Carball leaving the scene at 3:56 p.m. and never returned. If Allen committed the murders, there should be no human-initiated activity on LG's phone after 3:56 p.m., but there was. At trial, Allen called Eldridge, a former FBI forensic examiner who examined the data from LG's phone and testified that wire headphones or an auxiliary cable were plugged into the phone at 5:45 p.m. on February 13th and then removed at 10:32 p.m. This action would silence a phone call. And she noted that the data showed an incoming call moments before the headphones were inserted, suggesting someone was intentionally silencing LG's phone. Since the state claimed Allen left the murder scene at 3:56 p.m., Eldridge's evidence eviscerated the state's timeline and showed someone else committed the murders. Or it eviscerated the state's timeline. The state responded by asking Cecil, its phone expert, whether water damage could simulate headphones being plugged into LG's phone. Over a hearsay objection, Cecil testified he Googled it and found some unspecified, non-peer-reviewed troubleshooting forums reporting that it could. Cecil's testimony was inadmissible totem pole hearsay. Unless our evidence rules provide otherwise, out-of-court statements are not admissible for their truth. For totem pole hearsay to be admissible, each part of the combined statements must conform with an exception to the rule. Here, the posts on the troubleshooting forum are at least double hearsay, the internet forum and the statements posted there. Cecil's status as an expert does not affect the hearsay analysis. Statements contained in a reliable authority can be admitted over a hearsay objection when used to contradict an expert who is testifying on the witness stand. But here, the online forum was neither reliable nor used to contradict Cecil. Rule 703 does not avail the state either. Under 703, experts may testify to opinions based on inadmissible evidence if the evidence is of the type reasonably relied upon by experts in the field. The rule, however, does not authorize experts to parrot facts that the expert adds nothing to. Cecil added nothing here. He was a mouthpiece for totem pole hearsay that he Googled. The error was constitutional. A defendant is entitled to a fair opportunity to defend against the state's accusations. This includes the right to impeach a witness through cross-examination when they provide a crucial link in the defendant's guilt. Here, the judge arbitrarily allowed the state to undermine Eldridge's testimony with a person's internet post, and it was impossible for Allen to impeach the person through cross-examination. The error was harmful. Eldridge's testimony undermined the timeline upon which the state built its entire case. Allowing the state to rehabilitate the timeline affected Allen's substantial rights and the jury's decision. The court committed reversible error by excluding evidence that impeached the credibility of Allen's confessions. At trial, Allen sought to impeach the credibility of his confessions. The judge made 3 reversible errors. Together, those decisions violated his constitutional right to present a defense. When a defendant confesses, the manner in which the confession was obtained is relevant to the confession's credibility. 1, the court erred by excluding the audio from Allen's solitary confinement videos. At trial, Allen moved to introduce 15 videos showing the conditions he endured in solitary confinement. The court sustained the state's hearsay objection and overruled Allen to mute the videos when he showed them to the jury. This was reversible error. The audio shows a delusional, confused, and disorganized mind. The evidence can only be fully appreciated by listening to it. Accordingly, Allen respectfully requests this court watch the videos with audio. especially 172. Well, they list them out. The statements in those videos are not hearsay. Statements are not hearsay when used to prove a defendant's state of mind. This was precisely Allen's purpose in offering the evidence, and the trial court conceded. To the extent there are older cases suggesting that a defendant can never admit his own statements, those decisions are inconsistent with and should not survive the adoption of the modern rules of evidence. The audio in the video is also relevant because it impeaches Dr. Wallace's testimony and undermines her medical records. Wallace's evidence gave the misleading impression that Allen provided organized and detailed confessions with a beginning, middle, and end. But the omitted audio rebuts this, showing a disorganized, nonsensical, and confused Allen. For example, Dr. Wallace describes Allen's mind as more organized than he'd been. But the April 28th video puts this statement in context, showing a disjointed, tangential, nonsensical, and rambling Allen. He is plainly psychotic and uncredible. The audio also presents a vivid picture of solitary confinement's harsh conditions. Staff talk callously to Allen. Guards remark how long feces is on his back. Inmates tell him to kill himself, and medical staff ignore obvious signs of SMI and over-medication. In one video, medical personnel asks Allen about his cholesterol and blood pressure while ignoring his catatonia and drool. Without the audio, the video presents a misleading impression that the medical professionals are attentive, when in fact they are not. The error was harmful. The audio shows that Allen's statements in solitary confinement are unworthy of belief. Excluding them, therefore, affected his substantial rights and likely influenced the jury's decision. Terry, you want to take over? I need to get a drink.
Yep.
You can also hear Rocky, and I love it.
Okay. Tell me where we're at.
We're on page 99 on number 2.
Okay. The trial court committed reversible error in prohibiting the jury from hearing 2 phone calls Allen made on April 3rd, 2023. On April 2nd, Allen called his mother and discussed finding religion. In the early morning hours of April 3rd, Allen made 3 intertwined calls. Over objection, the jury heard the second call, where Allen confessed to his wife, but the judge prohibited the jury from hearing the calls that bookended it, where Allen questioned his sanity and the veracity of his own statements. Trooper Harshman's testimony made the error worse. Over objection, Harshman claimed that when confessing, Allen was consistently calm, subdued, and solemn in tone, showing no indication of duress or stress. But the excluded April 3rd calls discredit this testimony. Allen was confused and forgetful in those. He believed he was losing his mind and that IDOC was poisoning him. He referred to being mentally tortured, comparing his environment to Guantanamo Bay. Independently, this error was harmful and warrants reversal. In closing, the prosecutor told the jury Allen started confessing on April 3rd because he had... Are you changing the page? Given himself to Jesus the day before. The excluded April 3rd calls tell a different story. Allen was losing his mind, showing lapses in memory and confusing dreams with reality. The prosecutor got to offer an inculpatory story for how the confession started, while Allen was prohibited from presenting an exculpatory story through contemporaneous evidence. Number 3, the trial court erred by excluding the statements and behaviors that provided the foundation for Dr. Gracian's opinion that Allen's confessions were not credible. At trial, Dr. Gracian testified that Allen suffered from delirium, but the judge prohibited Dr. Gracian from discussing the statements that provided the foundation for this opinion, including Allen's statements that were patently false. This was reversible error. First, Allen's false statements were not hearsay. He offered the statements to show his state of mind and prove he was saying things unworthy of belief. Second, even if hearsay, The statements were admissible under Evidence Rule 703, which provides experts may testify to opinions based on inadmissible evidence, provided that it is of the type reasonably relied upon by experts in the field. And third, the statements were admissible because the state opened the door 3 times. Trooper Harshman testified that Allen's confessions were consistent with the facts and included details only the killer would know. The state also paraded witnesses before the jury who opined that Allen's mind was intact when he confessed and that he was faking his symptoms. And Dr. Walla testified that she saw no reason to screen Allen for delirium. Can you guys still hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Allen was entitled to counter all this evidence that his statements were false, inconsistent with the murder scene, and consistent with delirium. Independently, this error was harmful and warrants reversal. In closing, the prosecutor molded a story that despite Allen's undisputed psychosis, his confessions were truthful. The judge affected the jury's decision when she prohibited Allen from showing that he made repeated untruthful confessions. Together, the above 3 errors violated the Constitution. The Constitution prohibits a court from stripping a defendant of the power to describe to the jury the circumstances that prompted his confession. That is precisely what occurred here. Allen repeatedly presented evidence that placed his confessions into context and impeached their credibility, but the judge arbitrarily excluded the evidence and disproportionately ruled in the state's favor. F. The trial court committed reversible error in denying Allen's motion to correct errors. Allen timely filed a motion to correct errors, arguing the state elicited false testimony and allowed it to go uncorrected. The trial court denied the motion. The 14th Amendment is violated when the prosecution knowingly solicits false testimony or knowingly allows it to go uncorrected. According to Dr. Walla, Allen confessed that he was attempting to rape the girls, but abandoned his efforts and fled with them across the creek when he saw a van. At trial, the state elicited testimony from Brad Weber, who told the jury he left work at the Subaru factory in Lafayette around 2:02 p.m. on February 13, 2017, and drove his white cargo van directly home. The prosecutor told the jury that the timeline for Weber's testimony, Allen's confession, and the step data on LG Liberty's phone matched perfectly and proved Allen guilty. If you take a look at the health app data, there's a pause in the movement for 7 minutes. He has 7 minutes with them, but before he can finish his deed or his deeds, he sees a van. Brad Weber's coming home from work, down his private drive to his home, and he scares Richard Allen. Then Richard Allen forces the girls across the creek to a spot in the woods, a secluded spot, and he kills them. He cuts their neck. Weber's
Not very secluded, guys.
Yeah. Weber's testimony was false and the state knew it. Specifically, security camera footage from Weber's neighbor, Layla, knock it off, showed him arriving home around 2:44. And an FBI report showed Weber's cell phone arriving home around 2:50. The error was constitutional and requires reversal. A glossip error requires reversal if it could have been contributed to the verdict. Here, the false evidence, if corrected, would shown that Weber's arrival home was inconsistent with that state's murder timeline. Okay. He arrived home 25 minutes after the pause in movement on Libby's phone and nearly 15 minutes after Libby's phone was on the other side of the creek and hundreds of yards away from Weber's home. Thus, Allen's statements to Walla are inconsistent with the truth and suggest he was delirious. The error requires reversal. G. Trial court committed reversible error when it excluded Allen's evidence explaining this murder was a ritual killing. The trial court prohibited Allen from explaining the murder scene as a ritual killing. This was reversible error. Evidence which tends to show that someone else committed the crime logically makes it less probable that the defendant committed the crime and thus meets the definition of relevance in Rule 401. Here, Allen tendered Dawn Perlmutter a recognized expert in ritualistic killings and atypical homicides, to explain the elements of ritual killings. Ritual killings commonly occur outdoors in wooded areas and near bodies of water. They occur on holidays significant to the group and commonly often involve the use of ceremonial knives. There will be symbolism at the scene, and with Norse pagan rituals, the symbolism will likely involve runes, arranging natural objects in a specific way, and perhaps combining the runes with blood, blooding the runes. You don't get bullet wounds with ritual murders. Rather, there is usually throat slitting, blood loss, and perhaps torture. You would expect the sacrifice to be displayed or arranged at the scene in a manner that is significant to the group. And finally, you would expect the sacrifice to be displayed. And finally, you would expect to see an atypical or symbolic blood pattern at a ritual killing. According to Perlmutter, this murder scene included all of these elements. The murders occurred outdoors in a clearing near a large creek. The murders coincided with the Nordic holiday Valsblot, which honors Odin's son, Vali. The girls' throats were cut with a knife and they bled extensively. Perlmutter found the sticks to be obvious symbolism and difficult to explain in any other way. In her opinion, the stick arrangement on Abby mirrored the Norse rune Gebo, and the stick formation on Libby looked like a Nordic bind rune. Perlmutter also explained that the bodies were arranged in a manner consistent with the pagan ritual. An upside-down hanging body is an important element of Norse paganism because Odin hung from a tree for 9 days before discovering runes. And Odin's leg is often displayed with one leg bent behind the other. Here, the blood patterns on the girls' faces suggest a person lifted their bodies and articulated their torsos and necks above their chins. Abby's leg was bent behind the other, mirroring the classic image of Odin, and the blood pattern on the tree appeared to look like a Norse pagan Fehu rune. Perlmutter had the knowledge, skill, and experience to offer this testimony. Expert testimony should be admitted if 1, the expert is qualified by knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education, and 2, the testimony will help the trier of fact understand the evidence or to determine a fact in issue. Evidence Rule 703. Here, Perlmutter is an expert in ritualistic killings and a recognized federal subject matter expert on atypical homicide and ritualistic crime investigation. And she's the author of Ritualistic Crime Scene Investigations, a field guide for law enforcement officers investigating ritually motivated crimes. She teaches about ideological and ritualistic killings, and she's familiar with the practice of Norse paganism or Odinism. She was qualified to offer her testimony. Her testimony was not conjecture. There was always a discussion among law enforcement that this may be a ritual murder and that the sticks were Nordic runes. The BAU declined to exclude pagan ritual as a plausible explanation for the murder scene. A consulting professor found it quite plausible the stick markings constitute an intrusion inspired by Norse runes for modern recreations thereof. And an undercover law enforcement officer familiar with runes also found pagan symbolism at the scene. Perlmutter's testimony would be helpful to the jury. Although motive is not an element of murder, juries want an explanation for the crime. And when motive is unclear or inconsistent with the defendant's guilt, juries are more likely to acquit. Similarly, when a murder scene is complex or unusual, it is important that the jury receive an explanation. Here, the murder scene was complex and unusual, and the jury would naturally want an explanation. The sticks immediately stand out to any rational person as unusual and warranting an explanation. Perlmutter's testimony provides an answer, explains the scene, and offers a motive. Her testimony would be helpful to a jury. Excluding her testimony violated the Constitution. The defendant is entitled to answer the prosecution's case with his version of the facts so the jury may decide where the truth lies. And a judge cannot infringe upon his right through the arbitrary, disproportionate, or mechanistic application of the rules of evidence. Accordingly, if the state offers an inculpatory explanation for the evidence, Trial courts cannot use the rules of evidence to prohibit the defendant from offering an exculpatory explanation. By excluding Perlmutter's testimony, the trial court allowed the state to offer an inculpatory explanation for the murder scene while denying Allen his constitutional right to offer an explanation. This arbitrary and disproportionately denied Allen his constitutional right to present a defense. The error was not harmless. The state told the jury repeatedly this case was about a brutal murder, and it explained the evidence in a manner that incriminated Allen. The jury received a one-sided explanation for the crime without Allen being able to counter it. The error affected Allen's substantial rights and altered the jury's decision. H. The trial court denied Allen his right to show the state's investigation was incomplete, overlooked plausible leads, and mishandled evidence relating to third-party guilt. The trial court prohibited Allen from presenting any evidence regarding the manner, quality, and thoroughness of the investigation into this murder as a ritual killing. A defendant is entitled to have his case proved beyond a reasonable doubt, and the accused can create doubt by showing that the investigation was incomplete, overlooked
Carrie?
plausible leads. Yeah.
Have you ever heard of a case like that? That basically doesn't allow someone to do that?
Present a defense.
Yeah, present like an explanation that can rebut the exact thing.
It does happen, but not under these. I haven't heard of it under these circumstances. I worked on an appeal once with one of the attorneys in another state, and we had a similar situation where the trial judge at court just absolutely did not want this defendant to present a defense. I mean, just everything the defense threw at it, bam, they knocked it down. But our appeal
Was the appeal successful?
Yeah, it remanded it back down, identified the issues and remanded it back down. But it took so long for us to get there. Yeah, I mean, you know, so there's possible that this will happen. A defendant is entitled to have his case, proved beyond a reasonable doubt, and the accused can create doubt by showing that the investigation was incomplete, overlooked plausible leads, or that law enforcement mishandled evidence relating to a third party's guilt. That's what happened in our situation, in our appeal. The law enforcement had lost a bunch of recordings. Let's see.
Sounds familiar. Must be a chronic issue around the country for certain cases.
Well, it happens some. I don't know that it happens all the time, but you know, sometimes police officers just don't realize the significance, and they don't take the system into a backup state, or they don't have the proper technical people to do it, and they really should be doing that. Anyway, here,
that's an excuse. I don't like that.
Well, and it's not really, but you know, you got to remember these jurisdictions are bound by finances, okay? And many times a police department or an IT department will present to their managers, hey, we've got to do this for backup purposes, and they just won't approve it. And, you know, you don't hear about that necessarily at the trial level because that's an administrative function. But I can tell you, it does happen all the time. It happens all the time. So sometimes it's not the police wanting to override it. It's just, you know, the people just didn't do the right thing. And it's, you know, I don't know that that's this situation, but Allen presented evidence that the state performed an incomplete investigation, mishandled and destroyed evidence, and overlooked plausible third-party leads connected to pagan rituals. After examining the scene, several officers believed it was too complex for just one person to be involved. And the Carroll County Sheriff immediately thought the sticks related to pagan rituals. Now, who was that at the time? Who was the sheriff that thought that at the time?
Lesenby. Tobe Lesenby.
Okay, it was Lesenby. Okay.
Oh, come on.
Yet the day the girls went missing, law enforcement learned that Abby was having a secret relationship with Logan, the son of Brad Holder. That week, law enforcement interviewed Holder and his friend Patrick Westfall. Holder reported being involved in a pagan tribe and spending every weekend in Delphi, engaging in pagan rituals with Westfall and 5 or 6 others, including women. These rituals involved animal sacrifice and human bloodletting. Holder told police he owned a .40 caliber gun, but officers did not examine or collect the weapon, nor did they search his phone. Holder told police he was at work at Liberty Landfill when the girls went missing. Law enforcement recorded over Holder's interview, permanently deleting it. In his interview, Westfall told law enforcement he knew the woods where the girls were murdered very well. He reported knowing the girls, but denied ever meeting them.
That's what we've been talking about.
Yeah. What?
Westfall camping out
How
there.
well
in those
he-
woods.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
He also
Thought that was
reported-
really nice to hear. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Terry.
No,
Well, I
you're
kind of did,
okay.
but
Okay, no, it's fine. He also reported being a religious leader for local pagans, and he wore a necklace to the interview representing his efforts to pledge the Vinlanders. I mean, talk about shoving it in their face, right? You wear the necklace, you admit to all this stuff, but what are they going to do to me, right? Law
it's almost like he
enforcement
knows he's untouchable.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
He has reason.
As if some of the other people are in the special club with him. Layla, knock it off. Law enforcement neglected to record Westfall's interview, and when asked for an alibi, Westfall claimed he was at home with his minor son. In the 5.5 years between Westfall's interview and Allen's arrest, law enforcement took no further action. After Holder's interview, tipsters repeatedly called and reported him as a person of interest, claiming he posted pictures of half-dead women with symbols out of tree branches. On October 13th, 2017, officers visited the landfill to investigate and spoke with an employee, Susan Case, who provided a printout showing Holder swiped out of work at 2:45, which was 30 minutes after the Bridge Guy video. Case invited the officers to review video to confirm the printout's accuracy, but they declined, nor did they interview other employees. Unified Command marked Holder as a cleared suspect. On April 12th, 2017, it should say, shortly before taking medical leave, Trooper Winters received a call from a tipster, Ryan Boucher, who shared photos from Holder's social media. Winters found a concerning similarity between the murders and the pictures posted on Holder's social media. Those pictures depicted young girls believed to be deceased with sticks placed over their bodies. Okay.
Terry, do you want me to take over?
Yeah, you're going to have to. My voice is giving out.
Okay. And really quick, another little tidbit of information. Now that we have Brad Holder's deposition, in Brad Holder's deposition, he said that he called Patrick Westfall the day that the girls went missing. Well, the 13th, it was either the 13th or the 14th, either the day they went missing or while the search was going on. And he said Patrick told him he was out of town. But Holman claimed that Westfall was at home they proved that he was home with his son, but then later said, well, we couldn't put Westfall in Delphi. Well, Westfall lived in Delphi. Anywho, okay. Winters also noted similarity between the stick formation on AW and a bind rune Holder tattooed or drew on his hand. That's a bind rune on my hand. Basically, I took a Gibo rune and an Isa rune and I made it a bind rune. Holder's social media also featured him holding guns and homemade knives. Winters immediately recommended to his supervisors that law enforcement investigate Holder, which they declined to do, claiming his alibi was cleared by the FBI. Holder displayed a painting he made of Odin upside down with his right leg tucked behind his left. Holder's painting also featured a red Fehu rune. Winters was not satisfied and urged the ISP to conduct its own investigation. No further action was taken. In September of 2022, the state charged Allen. At Allen's At Allen's insistence, law enforcement re-examined Holder, and Holder's story about Abby Williams began to change. Back in 2017, he told law enforcement he never actually met her. He told law enforcement, but in August of 2023, he told law enforcement he met Abby once. And during a deposition in 2024, he said he met Abby Williams 2 times. At least one of those encounters occurred shortly before Abby Williams' murder at Westfall's home. On April 4th, 2024, Allen's counsel deposed Case, the Liberty Landfill HR officer, and found that Holder did not have exclusive control of his employee badge on the day the girls went missing. Allen also uncovered evidence that impeached the course of the investigation even further. In 2018, Holder told his wife he had a fight with Westfall because Westfall wanted to up from animal slaughter to a different type of sacrifice. Holder then told her that with others, that Westfall killed Abby and Libby with others and that she needed to keep her mouth shut about it. The evidence shows a shoddy, incomplete, and mishandled investigation into this murder as a ritual killing and raises a reasonable doubt that Holder and Westfall were responsible for the murders. Allen was entitled to present this evidence to the jury, and the judge committed reversible error by excluding it. The error violated the Constitution and affected the jury's decision. The Constitution entitles a defendant to attack not only the probative value of crucial physical evidence and the circumstances in which it was found, but the thoroughness and even the good faith of the investigation as well. Here, the omitted evidence created reasonable doubt and raised questions of the utmost importance about the manner, the quality, and the thoroughness of the investigation that led to Allen's arrest 5.5 years after the murders. Had the jury heard it, a different result was likely. Conclusion. The very premise of our adversary system of criminal justice is that partisan advocacy on both sides of a case will best promote the ultimate objective that the guilty be convicted and the innocent go free. Because the trial court prohibited the jury from hearing Allen's side of the story, showing how law enforcement went down the wrong path, justice could not be done. The appellant, Richard Allen, requests this court reverse his convictions. And that is it. There's the brief. So
I wanted to address something that was being discussed about in chat. Skinrow had written about the DVR. I worked in technology. It's how I paid my way through law school. And I'm really familiar with DVR systems with police departments because I worked there. And I can tell you that the DVR systems, jurisdictions don't always use the cloud like we do at a local level. They often have servers that are on the premise, and those hold all of the evidence from the police department. And then after a certain period of time, that information is uploaded to permanent storage, and it's kept for a long time. But when you are in a position where the people that approve your budget deny you the ability to get what you need, I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying that the people at the lower level, the IT director, the police chief, many times they have nothing they can do about that. So I just know that these things do happen. I'm not saying that that's what happened here. You know, it sounds like from the brief that they know there was some shenanigans going on and that it was overwritten or deleted purposely. But I'm just saying, in the grand scheme of things, keep that in mind, that not every single time something's overwritten like that, not every time is it nefarious. Sometimes it's just bad planning somewhere up the chain. I hope that makes sense.
And I personally don't think that Delphi has so many cases going on, that this case being as big and as massive as it was, that they weren't yanking those interviews right off of that drive and watching them, or letting Unified Command watch them. To me, it sounds like bullshit that those videos were lost.
No, and I agree with you. And also, one other thing in the chat is when the drive is full, like they claim, they don't overwrite, they stop working. It depends on the setting. The systems that we had it turned off so that there was a backup default, so that if it got full, it immediately moved over to another one. But the system we had before that one, you had an opportunity to say, if it gets to this capacity, 80%, overwrite these sectors. But I think Delphi, I think there was deleted evidence.
Well, and they were interviewing people at different locations. It wasn't all done
Exactly.
in the same place. And for there to be that many interviews lost, I just think there needs to be an investigation simply into that.
Because there's no telling how many other cases have been botched because of that.
Right. Well, guys, we've been on here for about 4 hours. I'm going to hop off. I've got to get dinner started. I will schedule another live and have some attorneys on. We're going to discuss the brief and the legality and the strength of it, the weaknesses of it. I'm glad that we were able to get through this whole document in one big chunk. That way, you guys, if you are on the replay crew, you can just pop in your earbuds and listen in the car or wherever. We did have some commentary, but for the most part, it was a good read through. So thank you, Terry and Fungi, for being here. But I have to go start dinner. Yeah.
Just make sure that you check your texts later, because I'm about to drop some bombs on you.
Okay.
Also, if you guys want to go check out what Andy Baldwin's got to say, he's over on Defense Diaries. And thank you guys for listening to us.
Yes, thank you so much. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe on the way out, please, and share the video. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.